So hey guys, how are you all? Today we're going to see, what if Harry Potter was raised by Mother of Magic? Part 2. If you're new here, subscribe, either I will take your quirk. Also, as you know, I do not own this story. If you want to see original creator, then go to space into Milky Way. LOL joking, you can find it in description. Alucard settled back into his seat, more closely to Severus, who was now squeezed between him and Hadrian, who had an arm around him again, closely watching the bludgers now and ignoring anything else what wasn't an immediate threat to his mate. It wasn't uncommon for something like this happening, but someone would think that in a school there were some protection shields set to prevent children getting injured. Well, another minus point in Alucard's book for the headmaster, who wasn't even present. The rest of the game was at least without any other similar incidents. At some point, Alucard observed the Dada professor leaving the stand, almost in a rush, seeming to have noticed Alucard's eyes on him and not liking it. After 6 hours, the game was over with Gryffindor as the winner. However, when they left the stand and just arriving outside the pitch, someone stepped into their way. Hadrian suppressed a groan when noticing it was James Potter. "May I help you?" asked Alucard calmly, fully aware who was standing in front of him. "I want you to apologize to my wife." "Who?" Harry didn't even end reading the nonsense when he heard a scoff across from him. "Skeeter has no clue what she's talking about. She doesn't even mention the peace treaty and that not all creatures fall under the laws the ministry put in place," stated Hermione. "Yeah, maybe your father should visit her and explain it to her," scowled Neville. "Tisk, father will have his fun. Just wait until tonight. I'm sure there will be an article with an apology from her in it. Dad hates journalists who don't care writing the truth but rather." "Oh, she even mentioned Severus," said Seamus. "She didn't," growled Hadrian. "She did." Hermione pointed at the spot, and Hadrian quickly read it. "Is a student with a baby dragon. His name is Severus Sephiroth Prince. Everyone knows it's illegal to keep a dragon. Where did the dragon come from? Did he steal an egg? Why had no one come yet and removed the dragon? This dragon should be among their kin and not in a school full of innocent children. One of the students told me that the dragon already attacked them several times and is scared what will happen when it grows." Hadrian snapped his head up and stared at the redhead sitting next to Hermione. "You spoke with this imbecile?" Ron gulped at Hadrian's harsh tone. "What? No. Why do you think I did? Ilike Norbert, don't lie to me. You're the only one Norbert has attacked, not without reason I might add. What does he have for a reason? I never did anything to hurt him. Are you kidding? Every time you endanger Severus with your stupid stunts, you endanger Norbert as well. Or do you forget that Norbert is with Severus all the time?" Ron flushed but didn't back down. "I did nothing wrong. She asked me about the dragon because she heard already rumors. I just told her the truth." "Truth?" "She's accusing Severus of stealing a dragon egg and endangering the school. Neither of it is even close to the truth. This dragon won't be a baby forever. Of course, it's a danger. Have you any idea what a full-grown dragon can do?" said Ron enraged. "Oh, I'm very much aware of it," replied Hadrian with growl. Hadrian's voice may be still this of a child, but that doesn't mean it was less intimidating if wanted. "Hadrian?" asked Severus, a little nervous. He didn't like that his name was inside the paper, and it made him nervous. Immediately, Hadrian's full attention was on his mate next to him, just finishing reading the article. "Don't worry, Sev. No one could take away Norbert. The ministry is informed, and you know what Mr. Clayton had said. And Norbert is very well behaving." Hadrian gave Ron another meaningful look. "Hey, what do you guys think about going to the lake after breakfast?" intervened Neville, not liking the tension. "Sounds good, but I have to finish my essay in Transfiguration first," said Hermione. "Oh, now that you mention it, I have to finish my essay for potions." "Ah, damn it," sighed Neville. "We don't have potions until Wednesday, Neville," pointed Ron out. "We can finish our essays together. I hadn't time to finish my for charms and potions due to the visit of my family," said Hadrian, and Severus nodded. "Then let us meet up in the library. With any luck, we're done until lunch and can go to the lake afterwards." "Sounds good." They stood and ignored Ron's calls. Outside of the hall, and making sure Ron hasn't followed, Neville said, "He's really annoying, and I have the feeling he'll cause many more trouble in the future." "I agree," whispered Hermione. "I can't understand why he's so focused to hang out with us." "Yeah, he seems to have managed to become friends with Seamus and Dean, though I don't know how. I wouldn't say they're friends. I'm almost sure Seamus and Dean aren't less annoyed by him as we are. And if you have noticed, Ron is less annoying us when we meet up in the library. Unfortunately, we can't hide there forever, sighed Hadrian. But why forcing himself to be around people he doesn't even like himself? I mean, I tried to become friends with the other girls in my school year, but they made it clear that they don't want anything to do with me, so I let them be. Severus could hear the sadness in Hermione's voice. He took her hand and gave her a smile when she looked at him, which she returned. I can answer it. And truly, I'm done thinking about it. He wants to hang out with us? Let him. It doesn't mean we have to talk to him. I told him that I'm not interested in being his friend. There isn't anything else I can do. But when he doesn't stop his attitude toward Severus, well, I won't hesitate to protect what is mine. Severus blushed, but didn't correct Hadrian. End of flashback. Now it was almost a month since Alucard's visit, and since the little group decided to ignore Ron whenever he joined them in the Great Hall or followed them around the next few days. It didn't take long, and to their delight, Ron mostly annoyed other students or was seen together with James Potter on the Quidditch field. And as Hadrian had said, there was another article denouncing Skeeter for her nonsense and explaining what Alucard already explained to the students about the peace treaty, and also that Harry Potter, now Hadrian Dragon Peverell, was adopted after being found alone in the Muggle world by Alucard Tempest, which of course led to even more questions, which were put to a stop quite quickly, but didn't stop students to ask Hadrian himself. However, now everyone was looking forward to have a break. Christmas wasn't far away, and most of the students would return home. Only a few will stay back and celebrate with the remaining professors. Hadrian was happy when Severus accepted the invitation to celebrate Yule and New Year with Hadrian's family. Hermione would also return, but mentioned she wanted to do some research on a Nicholas Flamel. She had overheard Potter and Ron discussing the break-in in Gringotts, and that whatever the headmaster is keeping hidden in Hogwarts belongs actually to Nicholas Flamel. Hadrian just shrugged, wishing her good luck in her research. Hermione had asked if he wasn't at least a little curious about what was going on. After all, there were rumors that whatever it was hunting the unicorns in the forest might try to get what was hidden in the castle. Hermione, the headmaster can do what he wants, as can you. If you want to know what might be hidden in the castle, feel free to get your answers. I, however, am not interested, especially when it involves Ron or one of the Potters. But what if something dangerous and puts Severus in danger? I mean, isn't it already a danger to all of us because it's in the castle? Maybe. My father had asked Dumbledore about it, but the headmaster refused to answer because of an oath. Father is also trying to find out what exactly is roaming through the forest, but had little luck so far. I promise not to do anything stupid, and to be honest, I don't plan to get involved whatever is going on as long as Severus isn't involved. He's my only responsibility. Anything else is the responsibility of the adults. You're right, but still, I'm curious. Again, feel free to satisfy your curiosity, but try to stay out of any trouble. Doing some research shouldn't cause any trouble, don't you think? Who knows? What do you think, Sevi? You said Nicholas Flamel? Hermione nodded, one eyebrow raised. Isn't he a very well-known alchemist? I think I read something about a stone he created which can transform any metal in gold, or can use to produce the elixir of life which can make the drinker immortal. Both Hadrian and Hermione gaped. How do you know that? Asked Hermione, stunned. I read a book. Severus looked innocently at them, but Hadrian couldn't remember seeing Severus reading a book about alchemy or about famous Wixen. Ah, okay. So Dumbledore is hiding a stone. And if it's correct what you're saying, then it might explain why a dark creature might want it. Maybe that's why the three-headed dog was or is in that room. He might guard it. Father wasn't very happy about it. Keeping such a huge dog in such small room is cruel. I'm sure the headmaster replaced the three-headed dog or put the stone somewhere else entirely. Who knows? He could even have decided to hide it somewhere outside of Hogwarts. You're right, but it's interesting. Maybe I should consider to become an alchemist? Sure, why not? Hermione smiled brightly and was gone to get any book she could get about the topic. Meanwhile, Hadrian turned to Severus, who was feeding Norbert and Dante. You're full of surprises, you know that? I haven't even noticed you read anything about a Nicholas Flamel. I think it's just a coincidence and you were in detention at the time. You remember? It was when Professor Evans gave you one. I went into the library and did some research on rare ingredients. Rare ingredients? But wouldn't that mean you needed access to the restricted section? I was with Professor McGonagall at the time. Your father had spoken with her and asked to allow me to read a few potion books, of course, only under supervision. Ah, I almost forgot. And in your research, you stumbled over this flannel guy. Severus nodded. Well, makes sense, I guess. Severus snickered, and both talked a little more about the upcoming holidays. Hadrian was also a little nervous because his father mentioned having invited someone else. He could only guess, but with Severus there, Hadrian might meet one of the most feared creatures. Christmas/Yule Part 1. Chapter Summary. Holidays have started, and our friends are now on their way back home. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. Pooh, I almost forgot to update. A little warning. The chapter contains some serious talking. Please take nothing as an offense. It's just my view of some things going wrong in our society. Regardless, I hope you will enjoy it. They sat in a compartment of the Hogwarts Express, heading to King's Cross in London. Hadrian and Severus shared the bank on one side, while Hermione and Neville sat across of them. They were quick to find it and made themselves comfortable. No one else disturbed them. To their luck, Ron stayed behind with his brothers because their parents visited the oldest of their children this year. They hadn't enough money to take all of them with them, and so they went only with Ginny as a late birthday gift. Not that Hadrian disliked any of the other Weasleys, but Ron started to follow them around wherever they went again. To their luck, he kept his mouth shut most of the time, but it was clear that Ron hadn't given up to be a part of their little group, even if they continue ignoring him. I can't believe it's already Yule. Not long, and we'll finish our first school year, announced Neville. Yeah, can't still believe what we went through already. Hopefully, the second part of the term won't be as exciting like the first one. One troll is more as enough, shivered Hermione, which the others agreed with a nod. Well, at least the last month was quiet, said Neville. But I have a question. The boy looked at the dragon wrapped around Severus' neck and covered by the thick scarf. What is it, Neville? Asked Hadrian, sure that he knew what the boy wanted to know, just to get his suspicion confirmed in the next second. I'm wondering, shouldn't Norbert be bigger at this time? Don't get me wrong. It's not that I think you don't care good enough for him, which you do. But, well, don't dragons grow up very fast? According to Mr. Clayton, dragons develop differently. Some kinds grow up fast. Others won't reach their full size until they are at least 3 years old. Norbert is a Norwegian ridgeback. It said we have to feed him with a mix of booze and chicken blood, but Mr. Clayton reassured us that this is a common misconception. As you know, we feed him fruit or meat. However, to come back to his growing up, end of the school year, Norbert will most likely be as big as a horse, which will be a problem. He's as big as a cat now, but it won't be long before Severus won't be able to carry him around any longer. You won't be able to keep him in Hogwarts either at some point, right? What will you do? He won't leave Severus' side until he's grown up, will he? No, but we have already spoken with Mr. Clayton about our options. We can keep Norbert in the size he has now by using a charm to minimize him. It won't harm or interfere with his growing up, but we will have to go out each day to take off the charm. Are you sure that will be okay? It'll only be for the rest of the term. To my own surprise, Mr. Clayton said that there is a possibility that Norbert will learn to change his own size. Don't ask me. Dragons have their own magic, and not everything is known about them. He isn't sure if Norbert will be able to do it, but there was one occasion they heard about where a dragon changed their size to fit better into their small hideout. But it's unclear if all dragons can do it, due to the circumstances, or only a few. But what if he can't do it? We will only use the charm to shrink him for the rest of the school term. Over the summer, we will teach Norbert to stay outside alone. Hagrid will keep an eye on him as well. Norbert likes him enough. Wow, you sure have thought about it, didn't you? Of course. We're fully aware that we can't keep him around if he gets any taller. As long as Severus can carry him under his robes, it won't be a problem. But as said, it won't be long, and Norbert will turn too big to do so. And the headmaster agrees to let a dragon live in Hogwarts. He hasn't much of a choice, hasn't he? Hadrian questioned with a lifted eyebrow, but also with a smirk. I suppose not, replied Hermione after considering it for a few seconds. Well, I'm confident you know what to do. At least Hagrid will be overjoyed to babysit Norbert shouldn't he learn to change his size, smiled Neville. Oh, I'm sure he will. And who knows, maybe we're able to teach Norbert to hunt on his own, so Hagrid can take him into the forest where Norbert can catch his own food. But will it not be too dangerous? I heard there are living acromantulas, very huge spiders. Maybe. We'll see if we come to this point. Nothing is decided yet, and everything depends how Norbert develops in the next months. We have the hope he might learn to shrink himself if we use the shrinking charm on him. If we keep it as a day-to-day routine, he might realize why we do it and will learn the ability out of instincts if he wants to stay with Severus if he isn't outside of the castle. Sounds like a plan anyway. Speaking about plans, what are you doing during the holidays? Did you also receive an invitation from Lord Malfoy to his yearly Yule Ball? I was shocked when my parents mentioned it in my last letter. I mean, Draco seems to be a nice guy, but everyone knows that his father joined the Death Eaters. HMPF. I didn't receive anything, but I wouldn't have expected it. After all, my parents are Muggles, and I, as a Muggle-born, wouldn't be invited to an event only for purebloods. Scoffed Hermione. Hermione, don't confuse Yule with an event just for purebloods. It's the equivalent to what Muggles call Christmas. It's a tradition of the wizarding world, not just for purebloods. I think this kind of misinformation is the reason why purebloods hate Muggleborns. I don't know when it started, but Father mentioned it to me when we spoke about the war. It's not an excuse for the Death Eaters to kill Muggles or anyone, but Wixen take their traditions very serious, and I kind of understand that most are very pissed of that Muggleborns or half-bloods raised by Muggles ignore those traditions or even try to replace them with their own. Hermione stared at Hadrian with shock. I don't mean it as an offense, Hermione. It isn't your fault. Neither that of the others, not raised in our world. It's an error in the education itself, which I realized recently. It's the same issue with the education about the peace treaty with the oldest of creatures. Did you read Hogwarts? The history? Hermione nodded and frowned. Then it should have occurred to you that some events hadn't happened, or that Halloween wasn't always called Halloween, but Samhain? That also includes the Yule Ball celebrated in Hogwarts. It happened when my grandma was a student, but stopped someday later, I think after Dumbledore took the position at headmaster. Yes, he did a lot of damage, but most didn't want to see it. He might have done good things like fighting Grindelwald, but if you put this aside and take a closer look at what he had done since then and everything that followed, you will see what kind of mistakes he did. He might not be the cause of purebloods hating Muggles, but he didn't do anything to close the gap between them as well. It's more the opposite. Hermione nodded slowly. She could remember reading the different kinds of traditions, but never thought about it more deeply. I think I get it. It's similar to two different cultures. Dad often says sometimes that some of the people from another country should have been never accepted in ours. They don't accept our culture, hurt people, ignore our laws, but if you say something about it in public, then people say you're bad, a Nazi, because you have no tolerance or hate people from another country of origin. Why? Asked Neville, bewildered. I don't understand it either. My father has many friends with different kinds of backgrounds. He just doesn't like if people are allowed to stay in our country who don't respect our culture and law and spread their hate. And now you might understand why many of the purebloods don't like the Muggles. They are welcomed into the wizarding world, but most don't care to learn about it. There are rules how to greet older Wixen, or especially purebloods. You might think it's idiotic, but it's something happening for hundreds of years. And you laugh about or ignore it. No one says you have to give up your own traditions or beliefs, but they expect that their own are respected as much. If you don't like the rules or the new culture, you could leave and search for another place. But the people stay and expect that the welcoming country or culture bend over to their own wills. And that's what leads to hate, intolerance, and fights. In the worst case, people die, which only fuels it even more. But what to do? I learned some of the rules from my tutor before I entered Hogwarts, but others did not. As I said, it's an error in the education or even in the whole process how Muggleborns are introduced to our world. The error falls to those in the ministry who are blind to all the issues or just think the opinion of their own people doesn't matter because it might be against their own, or they are just corrupt. The problem is that it's not them who pay the price, but those who work every day to feed their family. Conventional people don't care about others' origin, about their looks, which color their skin has, or about their gender. Of course, they are always exception, but most of them don't care. They just want to live their life as best as they can, and the only thing they expect from others is that they respect them as well. Wow, are you sure you're 11? Gaped Neville. I am, snickered Hadrian, though it was a little bitter. You're right, Hadrian. I'll learn more about the traditions and etiquette of the wizarding world, including this of the creatures. Do this. Maybe I'd also learn more about the Muggle world, mused Neville. I can bring you some books if you want, offered Hermione with a smile. Yeah, that would be great, thank you, smiled Neville back. Not all changes are good. Not all traditions corresponded to the time we live in. It's difficult to unite several different kinds of opinions, and therefore it's important that people living in a society learn to respect that different kind of opinions. Not everything is black and white. Not all purebloods hate Muggles, while Muggleborns or half-bloods, raised by Muggles, aren't all ignorant of the wizarding world's history and traditions. And not all creatures are monsters, added Hermione. Okay, I think we got a little lost, though it was really insightful about the issues our society is facing. But did you receive an invitation to the Yule Ball, Hadrian? Yes, however, Severus and I won't participate. Father isn't very keen to have us exposed to people who might be a threat to us. My parents thought the same. They declined the invitation because they already planned something else, though I have no clue what it is. Dad also invited someone, but I don't know who it is either. Well, seems they have some surprises for us. Yeah, it wasn't long until they arrived in King's Cross. Severus had fallen asleep not long after they departed from Hogsmeade, cuddled into Hadrian's side. Now he was sleepily rubbing his eyes, after Hadrian gently woke him up. They took their luggage and left the train. Severus hesitated a moment when he stood in the exit, overwhelmed by all the people waiting outside. He could feel eyes on him and also hear some whispers. His silver blue hair and eyes alone were eye-catching, but the dragon around his neck was surely the most interesting part of him. Norbert had wiggled out his head from under the scarf and was now watching these new surroundings. He didn't leave his position, but his head was as big as Severus' fist and not easily overlooked anymore, especially not if people knew that there was a dragon. Hadrian gave Severus a small nudge, and he awkwardly stepped on the ground of the station. When a sudden flashlight blinded him, Severus flinched and reared back right into Hadrian, who wrapped his arm protectively around Severus' middle, keeping him from falling. Before both knew it, there was a blonde woman in front of them. But before she could say anything, another person stood between them. Hadrian signed in relief when he recognized his father. You better make yourself rare, or I'm forgetting my manners. With a twitch of his wrist, the camera was destroyed. People took several steps back, but the woman held her ground. This is an open place. You can't just order me to leave. I can and I will if I see you as a threat to my family, Miss Skeeter. Those boys are under my protection, and I won't hesitate to kill you. Skeeter gritted her teeth, but left when Alukard took a step forward with sharp teeth at display. Alukard watched her until she was out of sight, then took in the staring crowd. My apologies, but I hate people who think they can do whatever they want. The crowd nodded and then quickly gathered their children and fled. Tisk, morons. Alukard turned with a wide smile and arms wide open, hugging them both. I hope you had both a pleasant journey. Do you have everything? What was that? Asked Hadrian, having not let go of Severus. Don't bother. Skeeter is just pissed that I told her boss to keep her in line. Doesn't seem he's doing a good job. No, and I'll have another conservation with him, but that can wait until after the holidays are over. Hello, Mr. Longbottom, Ms. Granger. Alukard turned his gaze to the other two children still in the train. Severus and Hadrian made room for them to leave as well, while both greeted Alukard as well. Neville. The group turned to the voice and watched two pairs walking over to them. Hey, Mom, Dad. Hermione. We missed you. They all greeted each other and then departed with wishing each other a nice Christmas/Yule. Come, Juna is waiting already. Let me take your stuff, Severus. You look exhausted. He slept the entire way, stated Hadrian, worried that Severus still looks as he hadn't slept at all. I'm fine. Severus gave them a reassuring smile, just to sway in the next moment when he made himself ready to follow Alukard. Okay, that doesn't look to me as fine. Without hesitation, Alukard swapped Severus up on his hip, holding him with one arm while he took his luggage with the other. Let us go. Elizabeth will have a look at you, Severus, as soon as we're home. Severus stared at Alukard, still stunned that the man picked him up. However, as soon as he relaxed, his head fell on Alucard's shoulder, and Severus fell back into sleep. Hadrian, how long had it been since Severus behaves like this? He was just fine this morning. There wasn't any signs he could be ill, or I'd have warned you. Maybe it's just a kind of travel sickness. But wouldn't he have vomited or something? Maybe. Let us just turn back and let least take a look. I might be old, but even I don't know everything. Lise is more an expert when it comes to any kinds of illnesses. But maybe. Alucard glanced down at Severus. The boy didn't look ill, just exhausted. Maybe, pressed Hadrian when Alucard didn't continue. Maybe his body is preparing for a magical boost. Oh, but why would he be exhausted? Maybe it's because of his nature as a death angel. I see. So it's not the same like when my magic strength increases. I'm not sure. Severus is unique. It's difficult to say what could be the cause of his exhaustion, but I'm sure we will find out soon. Lise might have some ideas. Didn't you know the last death angel? Yes, but when I met them, they were already an adult, and I can't remember who might have known them as a child. When they reached the apparition place, Hadrian took Alucard's wrist. Just a second later, they were standing in the hallway of their home, where Juna and Elizabeth were waiting. Juna didn't hesitate and jumped into her older brother's arms while Elizabeth followed in a slower pace. Her smile turned into a frown when Alucard met her eyes, not smiling himself. Lise, I'm sorry that I can't introduce you to Severus properly, but something isn't right with him. I need you to take a look at him. What do you mean, Papa? Is Severus ill? Asked Juna, now looking worried as well at the sleeping boy. Where is Norbert? Hearing his name, Norbert peeked out his little head, again taking in his new surroundings. When the flashlight had blinded him, he immediately went back under Severus' scarf, hiding. But now, everything was calmer, and except of this new person standing 2 feet away, the little dragon felt it was safe to come out again. Oh, what a cutie, cooed Elizabeth. He seems calm. You said he's sharing a bond with Severus, right? Alucard nodded. Then I don't think it's something serious. Most creature children sharing a bond with their parent can feel if something isn't right. Still, let us have a look. Christmas/Yule Part 2. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Alucard laid Severus down on Hadrian's bed. Elizabeth had her wand already out and started a diagnostic charm as soon as Alucard stepped back next to Hadrian and Juna. Neither of them wanted to leave until they knew what was wrong. It took just a couple of minutes for Elizabeth to know what was going on. It seems that Severus is fighting off something and it's draining his magic. What? What is it? Exclaimed Hadrian. Elizabeth performed another spell. Reading over another parchment, Elizabeth narrowed her eyes, which didn't anything else as to increase Hadrian's anxiety. Hadrian, since when Severus has started to be exhausted? Well, Severus isn't getting much of sleep since Norbert had bonded with him, but being tired as he is now, until we reached King's Cross, I didn't even know something is wrong. He fell asleep not long we departed, but I assumed he was just tired. When we reached the station, I also had no problem with waking him up. Then we left the train. There was a sudden flashlight, which let Severus stagger back into me, and Skeeter stood before us. She had no time to ask anything, because at the next moment Dad was between us and forced her to leave us alone. When we're ready to go, Severus swayed. Dad picked him up and he fell asleep right in his arms. Did something happen before you left school or while you were on the way to the train? Hadrian crunched his face in thought. Nothing unusual happened during breakfast, but there was an accident close at the train station in Hogsmeade. Shortly before we entered the platform, the carriage of one of the traders tipped over. He had different types of plants, but also some flying creatures. Oh, we had to dodge them, because they made their way directly in our direction to flee into the forest. Can you describe them? Elizabeth began to remove Severus' clothes in a hurry. Hadrian's eyes widened when his own father began to remove his clothes. Not sure. Small like fairies, I guess? But it wasn't fairies. They seemed to have dark hair and extra pairs of arms and legs. The next second, Hadrian heard a hiss and looked over while his father was examining him as Elizabeth had just freed Severus' right arm. There was a red, angry-looking spot on Severus' wrist. Juna, sweetheart, would you please bring me the book about magical creatures? You know the green one in your room. Yes, Lise. Be back in a sec. The girl ran to her room, while Lise took a closer look at the bite. I think I know what our culprit could be, but I want to be sure. Juna came back running and gave Elizabeth the book. Okay, Hadrian. Was it this one? Elizabeth held out the book for Hadrian to see. He stepped a little closer and took in the picture, nodding in confirmation a few seconds later. Yes, a doxy. Hadrian heard his father muttering a curse through gritted teeth. He read what the book said and went pale. Why didn't I notice? There were no signs that Severus was bitten. It wasn't even that we were attacked. They just flew above our heads and were gone in seconds. It's not your fault, Hadrian. Luckily, Severus isn't a mere wizard, but a creature. Death angels are immune against most poisons, or in some cases less affected. In this case, his magic is fighting of the poison, but it's the reason why he's exhausted, explained Elizabeth. It's hours since he was bitten. The poison should be already out of his system. I'll put some salve on the wound, and tomorrow he'll be as good as new. You're sure? Yes. Hadrian sighed in relief and sat down next to Severus. Let him sleep. I'll check on him regularly, but you don't need to worry. I hope nobody else was bitten. I didn't notice if it was the case. The others hadn't said anything as well, but it doesn't mean others weren't hurt. You can write your friends and ask them. Still, why was Severus bitten? Isn't that a little weird that of all it has been him? Muttered Hadrian. Who knows? Doxies are unpredictable. If others were bitten, then you better hope that they got an antidote ASAP. If not, then I'd agree that there might be a little more to the incident. However, let us not dwell on it for now. It's Christmas. You're home and safe. Severus will be fine. Suddenly, Hadrian snickered, which caused the other to look at him in question. I think Norbert ate the doxy. I can remember him growling, and I think there was a leg hanging outside his mouth. Yeah, I'm quite sure. Hadrian stared at the dragon curled up next to Severus' head. I'd say Severus wasn't the only one bitten. Alukard came back into the room. Hadrian hadn't even noticed that he had left, but had his full attention now on his father. I just went and contacted Benny. St. Mungo's received some patients this morning. A few students were also among them. And as it seemed, it was an accident, a spell hitting the wrong target. A sixth-year student wanted to hex another, but the spell missed and instead hit the carriage. Oh, are they fine? There were some close calls, but no one died. Still weird that we didn't notice, but I guess we missed it because Hagrid rushed us to the train as quickly as he could. And we were heading at the opposite direction as the doxies. I think it's enough for today. We know now what happened, and luckily no one died today. Juna, come. I'll help you to get ready for bed. But I'm not tired. Maybe, but if you want to play all day tomorrow with our guest, then you sure want to be fit, right? Oh yeah. The little girl took Elizabeth's hand and followed her outside. Hadrian also prepared for bed and joined Severus in his sleep not long after. The next morning, Severus awoke with a slight headache and was at first confused to wake up in a room unknown to him. However, before he could panic, Severus was greeted with a whispered good morning from Hadrian, who laid next to him. Severus turned his head and was met with emerald green and golden eyes. Hi, how are you feeling? Headache. What happened? Severus listened and searched his arm for the bite when Hadrian mentioned it. There was a white bandage around the spot, which Hadrian told him not to remove until Elizabeth, his more or less adopted mother, was there to check it. A doxy. We didn't have any lesson about them yet. I found them kind of cute. I think they were just scared, whispered Severus. Cute, huh? Didn't think about it that way. But I can't really argue about it. Dante is also cute. So is Norbert, and both aren't necessarily creatures some would account as cute, which they definitely are. Maybe it's also the size? Most people find small animals cute until they grow up and bite them in the ass. Severus snickered at Hadrian's rambling. I'm hungry. What time is it? Asked Severus. Time for breakfast. Are you feeling well enough to get up? Severus nodded and slowly stood up with Hadrian's help. They put on some comfortable clothes and went down to the dining room, where Alukard was already sitting in his usually chair on the head, sipping his coffee while reading the Daily Prophet. When the boys entered, he looked up, giving Severus a short once-over before greeting them. Good morning. Did you sleep well? Good morning, Dad. Morning, sir. Severus, please call me Alukard. There is no necessity of politeness here. And you're practically family. Yes. Morning, Alukard. Severus turned a little red when Alukard beamed at him. Hadrian led Severus to a chair on the left from Alukard. It was usually his spot, but Hadrian liked to have his mate between him and his father. Even if there was no danger, still Hadrian preferred having Severus surrounded by people he trusted. So, how was your sleep? How are you feeling? I assume Hadrian told you what happened? Yes. I have a slight headache, but that's all. Least expected that. Here is potion for the headache. As you can see, there is plenty for breakfast. If you miss something, let me know. Severus let his gaze wander over the different plates. He had the feeling there was even more of a selection than in Hogwarts. As soon as Severus begun to fill his plate, Dante and Norbert put out their heads to watch, patiently waiting for Severus giving them food. Alucard watched in fascination how Bat and Dragon ate without making a mess or fighting each other. Where are Juna and Elizabeth? Juna had a little tantrum and isn't allowed out of her room until lunch. Elizabeth went to Diagon Alley because she forgot something for our Christmas dinner tomorrow. What is our plan for the next days? Alucard put down the paper and looked at the two boys. Well, for today, you can do whatever you want. I haven't planned anything. But you can start with showing Severus around when you're done with breakfast. The guest I mentioned in my letter won't arrive until after dinner today. They'll also watch you while I attend the ball at Malfoy Manor tonight. Depending on how long they'll stay, we'll either stay at home or going out. Lord Longbottom sent us an invitation for lunch the day after tomorrow. Days between Christmas and New Year. I want you to work at any assignment you got as homework from your professors. Shouldn't it be done already? If it's done, we can take Severus out to one of our estates in France or Italy. Or if Severus wants, we can brew some potions. Alucard grinned widely. I'd like brewing potions, replied Severus, looking a little unsure to Hadrian, though. That's fine for me. I'm not sure if it would be a good idea to visit another country with a dragon in tow anyway, shrugged Hadrian. And even then, we have only a few days before we have to return. If you prefer to brew potions, then I won't deny you your favorite hobby. I can play with Juna and Norbert in the meanwhile. Maybe we can invite some of the others? Directed Hadrian his question at his father. Sure. And like this the day went on. Hadrian showed Severus around, introduced him to Elizabeth properly when she came back from her trip, and they played with Juna and Norbert after lunch in the backyard of the estate. After another checkup, Elizabeth also gave Severus the go to perform magic, which allowed Hadrian and Severus to practice some spells they learned so far in Hogwarts. Alucard also gave Hadrian a warning shortly before dinner started while Severus was taking a shower. Hadrian, I think you can already imagine who our guest might be, but I want to warn you anyway. This visit might not be very pleasant, at least not for us. Even if they won't do anything, alone their presence brings a cold within that isn't very comfortable. So, then it's really Severus' father coming for a visit? Yes. Try to be relaxed whatever happens. Don't forget that it's Severus' family and that they aren't here to kill anyone, at least not without a reason. I give my best. And he really did when during dinner the air begun to run cold before ice started to cover everything. Alucard took Juna in his arms and covered her with a thick blanket. Even the vampire shivered slightly at the cold, as did Elizabeth and Harry. Norbert disappeared under Severus' robe, feeling something dangerous approaching, but also safe because his mother didn't feel terrified, but excited and happy. At first, Severus looked confused, but quickly recognized the familiar presence coming closer and closer. He jumped from his seat and ran outside, followed by the others in a slower pace. As soon as he stepped outside, Severus searched the figure of his parent. He could feel it behind him and quickly turned around, jumping in the air to be picked up by long, sharp claws. Severus grinned widely at the hidden face under the hood. Hadrian wasn't sure if he should be horrified or fascinated, probably the last, but that was easier said than done. He never saw a Dementor this close, and like his father had warned him, the feeling wasn't a very pleasant one. Even as a dragon, he felt treated. And yeah, he could see why they are called the executioners of Lady Magic, or why Wixen see them as monsters. That will take a while for Hadrian to get used to, feeling like prey instead of the predator. Chapter and notes. Hope you liked it. Happy face. Christmas/Yule Part 3. Chapter summary. Hadrian meets Severus' father, and Alucard meets the Malfoys. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Have fun, my dear readers. Hadrian shivered. Even with his warm clothes on, the cold was barely manageable. His father had warned him, but Hadrian still hadn't expected such kind of coldness. It wasn't the same cold a winter night would bring, which could creep down its way down to the bones, but this seemed to reach one's magical core. And there was the feeling of dread, fear, desperation. How Severus could stand it for, well, all his life since his rebirth, Hadrian couldn't comprehend. And it was strange to see Severus in this creature's arms, almost disappearing into the black robes. Hadrian's instincts were fighting a battle between the fear of his mate, to take him from the Dementor at all costs, and running as far as he could. Sure, Hadrian knew of Dementors and that they were most likely the deadliest of all creatures. But hearing and seeing one with your own eyes? Hadrian got a complete new understanding of this whole situation. Should ever something happen to Severus, the Dementors wouldn't be the only threat to whoever heard him, or the magical world itself. Should Severus die, Hadrian pushed the thought away. Hadrian, I'm sure you understand now even more how important it is to keep Severus safe. Lady Magic won't show or have any mercy should we disappoint her trust in doing so. Dementor wasn't the only one tasked with our little Death Angel's protection. The moment Severus left his home to enter Hogwarts, this task was handed to us as well. It isn't the same as before whenever Lady Magic gifted us with the presence of a Death Angel. This time it's different. I can feel it. The moment I saw him, I knew there wouldn't be a magical world left, no matter if you're creature or not. Dementor and his Dementors won't stop to take the souls from any living magical being before joining Lady Magic in her realm. Hadrian didn't answer immediately, knowing his father was right. Deep down his magic was buzzing, agreeing. The magical world better took good care about their Death Angel, or there won't be anything left of it. And so far, Hadrian had done a poor job. Before he could continue to travel down his guilty road, his father continued. We won't be able to protect him from everything. Lady Magic knows it. Might it be during brewing, training his spells, experimenting, developing, or just cutting himself while preparing ingredients. There will be things we can't protect him from. But we know about the threat of the Dark Lord and his Death Eaters. We know that there will be other people trying to use or hurt Severus. These are the threats we have to look out for and take care of them. I'm not sure about the headmaster yet. He seems to care about the magical world, but his lack of protecting individuals is more than disturbing. When I had Lily Potter pinned at the wall in his office, he just watched. Regardless of making a wise decision not to attack, I still expected him to at least pull out his wand to protect her. He reminds me of people liking to have their pawns staggered out around a chessboard, but without hesitating to sacrifice them if necessary. That's my feeling as well. Yeah, don't ever let your guard down around him, and let him never speak with Severus alone. If he wants to speak with him, inform me immediately. You don't have to say it twice. He isn't trustworthy in the slightest. Since my arriving, I never showed any sign of the opposite. Very true. The next years will be the most important to proof Lady Magic that we can protect little Severus. Your decision to join the Hogwarts staff was very wise, Alukard. Alukard. Hadrian and Juna glanced over to Elizabeth, whose eyes implied she wasn't completely in the here and now. Can you see something in special? I can see a few glimpses, nothing detailed or what is awaiting us exactly. But there will be many challenges. Maybe Lady Magic will grant me some more precise visions when we come closer to some of these events. The current fight between light and dark won't be a walk in the park, but as long as we keep our guard up and look out for each other, I'm sure we will be able to handle it. Elizabeth smiled at them when her focus turned back to the present. That we will. Alukard straightened his back when Dementor finally turned to them. Be respectful, and you won't have to fear anything. Hadrian mirrored his father and tried not to shiver when the Dementor, still having Severus in his hold, flew over to them. Severus looked happy, having a huge smile on his face while snuggling against his father. Ah, Dementor, my old friend, let me introduce you to my son, Hadrian, and my daughter, Juna. Good evening. Nice to meet you, greeted Hadrian, followed by Juna, who was barely visible in her thick blanket. You might still remember Elizabeth, even if it had been a while since you saw each other, continued Alukard. Welcome, Dementor. It's a pleasure to see you again. I hope you had a good journey, greeted Elizabeth as well. Journey? Uneventful. Fast. Wanted to see little angel, Severus. Hadrian almost jumped out of his skin when a voice rung through his head, not expecting to receive a verbal answer, especially not via telepathy. His father never mentioned it. Hadrian gave Alukard a brief stink eye when he noticed the slight twitch of his father's lips. I can imagine. It must be difficult to hold back invading Hogwarts when receiving all those news about Severus being in trouble. Little one not wish us to come. Scared we get hurt. Silly. Hadrian gaped. Sure, the Dementor just scoffed at the end. You're his family. Of course, Severus is worried. You might be immortal, but getting hit by a Patronus isn't painless. Stupid spell. Rarely strong enough. Mostly an itch. There, was that a shrug? Oh, good for you then. Or maybe Lady Magic decided to lessen the spell's effect on you. Or you develop an immunity. A shrug. This time Hadrian was sure. He couldn't stop staring at the creature. His fear lessened with each second, and Hadrian thought the cold was slowly retreating, at least from his magical core. Alucard and Elizabeth also stopped shivering. How? I see you're in a good mood. That's great. I'll never get used to the cold you bring with you, especially when you arrive. And there was another shrug. It was official. Hadrian missed something. Shall we go inside? We just more or less finished dinner. I also have to make myself ready for the Yule Ball at Malfoy Manor. You can use the time to learn more about your son's mate. Dementor looked up and studied Alucard before his gaze fell on Hadrian. Mate, I'm Severus, mate. I promise he's in good hands. I'll protect him and not do anything without his consent. Hadrian had to fight his instincts to run when the Dementor approached him until he was only inches away, hovering over Hadrian, threatening. Father, Hadrian is good. We talked about it. I know he's my mate. I agreed to let him court me. Oh, and here, look. This is Norbert. Dementor didn't stop staring at Hadrian until Severus coaxed little Norbert out of his hiding spot under Severus' robes. Hadrian released his breath, not having realized he held it until the Dementor retreated a little and turned his attention to the little dragon. Norbert wasn't very happy when his mother forced him out of his hiding spot. He made himself as small as possible, tail between his legs. His mother might not be scared, but that didn't mean Norbert was less nervous about the dark creatures staring at him. Norbert let out a little squeak when a cold claw touched his head, but when nothing happened, he started to relax. Still, as soon as the claw disappeared and the attention wasn't longer on him, Norbert crawled back under Severus' robes. After all, there was much warmer. Well, I must go. Please make yourself comfortable. We can talk when I'm back or tomorrow morning, Dementor. Severus and Hadrian can inform you about their adventures. Be warned, you might not like what you hear, but be assured that I already made a point. I see. Welcome, Lord Tempest. It's my pleasure to finally meet you. I hope you had a nice journey. Alucard took in the blond man in front of him. Lucius Malfoy looked like a proud, but also very arrogant wizard. Alucard had to give it him. He's good in hiding his true feelings. However, Alucard could smell it. In front of him stood a broken dark elf, devastated and terrified. Likewise, Lord Malfoy. Thank you for the invitation. I hope you will find a few minutes to discuss a few topics of mine. Sure. Maybe after the ball ended and my other guests left, if your time allow it, of course. That's fine. This is my wife, Lady Narcissa Malfoy née Black. Narcissa, this Lord Alucard Tempest, introduced Lucius's wife after finishing her greetings to another couple. My pleasure, Lord Tempest. Draco told us about your visit in Hogwarts and your short history lesson. It was very interesting. She gave him a knowing look. She knew. They both did. They knew that Severus was a death angel and what it meant. Well, thought Alucard, it might make things far easier. Ah, yes. I remember seeing your son quite often around my son's friend, Severus Prince. My son informed about their little discussion, and it's one reason I'm here. But let us discuss it later. For now, I'd like to get a feeling of some people you invited as well. Your son mentioned that some might be interested in my business. Sure. Please follow me. We're still awaiting some other guests, so I'll escort you to the ballroom and introduce you to those already present. Thanks, Lady Narcissa. Just Narcissa for you. Very well. You can call me Alucard. Lucius watched the living vampire disappearing with his wife. For the first time in a very long time, something like a spark of hope was forming inside him, not only for him, but for his family. Draco was now the new protector of Severus. Lucius wasn't sure yet if Draco knew that his protege wasn't just de-aged, but reborn as the most important creature to Lady Magic. When Draco told them about Alucard's visit and his history lesson about the peace treaty, Narcissa and Lucius knew, or at least had a very good assumption, that Severus Snape had been reborn as a death angel. The Black family, like the Malfoys, were very old families of creatures. They itself might be young, babies if you consider how old they can get, thousands and thousands of years if they come into their full creature inheritance. But they learned what a death angel meant. Lucius was just glad that his own father was dead, and he hoped that the Dark Lord would never find out what Severus had become. The Dark Lord knew about the peace treaty and the creature of old, but Lucius wasn't sure if he was aware about Lady Magic's most precious creature. But Lucius knew that should Voldemort find out that he would try to enslave Severus, no matter what. He would use the boy to control the oldest of creatures, who most likely would do whatever it took to protect the Death Angel. And who knew what would happen if Lady Magic decided to take her precious child back? The thought let Lucius shiver. To his luck, new guests arrived before his thoughts could spiral further into darkness. Christmas/Yule Part 4. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. Hey guys, have fun with the new chapter. Hadrian felt awkward. He sat in one of the recliners in the living room, observing Severus chattering with his adoptive parent, still happily wrapped up in Dementor's arms, who hovered in the middle of the room, listening to his son. The scene was very much, well, domestic. A parent listening to his son's adventures in school, but what made it awkward was the fact that Severus didn't hold back anything from his father. How he would sleep in Hadrian's bed at night. How it was most likely due to Hadrian's sin on him that Norbert recognized Severus as his maternal parent. How Hadrian revealed to Severus that they were mates and that Hadrian promised not to be improper until both were older and wanted it. This was also the moment Dementor turned his attention to Hadrian. He had to suppress a flinch of the sudden drop of temperature, but gathered all his determination to ask the one question he needed to ask Dementor. Hadrian stood up and bowed slightly. Sir, I know Severus and I are still young, but due to the circumstances, may I have your permission to court Severus? I promise not to do anything which could harm Severus or any of our children, adopted, human or creature, at least not on purpose, good intention or not. I swear I'll protect them with everything I have, even if it means my own death in doing so, which only will be my last resort if anything else fails. So, before Hadrian could end, Dementor interrupted him. The moment you die, Severus will follow. Souls bond for eternity, a bond of life and death. One cannot live without the other. As soon as your bond is consumed, it cannot be undone. Keep that in mind before you make an unbreakable vow. Hadrian gaped. He didn't know that. Sure, he knew that Severus was his mate, but what Dementor explained wasn't just a simple mating bond. It was so much more a soul bond. Severus wasn't just Hadrian's mate. They shared their souls, or at least they will do it, as soon as they mate. A mating bond can be broken, sure with some unpleasant consequences, but it didn't automatically end in death. A soul bond, though? No chance a partner would survive. The loss of his soulmate. Light and dark. Life and death. I swear to keep Severus and myself alive until Lady Magic decides it's time for us to rest. I swear to do everything in my power to protect my family, to always stay on Severus' side, no matter what. My highest priority will always be just that. I'll be whatever Severus wants me to be, his guardian, friend, lover, mate, his death should the time come, even if it means my own. So mote it be. The word just flooded out of Hadrian's mouth without another thought. Dementor titled his head, not stopping to stare at Hadrian, who held his breath. Very well. Permission of courtship granted. Oh, really? Hadrian wasn't sure if he heard correctly. Severus accepts you. His decision it will be to mate or not. I won't interfere. But you hurt him. You turn against him. Break your vow. You'll suffer the wrath of my kind. Lady Magic will free Severus of your bond. Love him. You're together for eternity. Hate him. Your bond will break. You'll die alone. Understood, and I accept any punishment from you or delivered by Lady Magic herself should I ever betray Severus. So mote it be. Hadrian didn't hesitate to add this vow, which seemed to satisfy the Dementor, or should we say future father-in-law. Severus, for his part, watched and listened to their exchange. When his father announced his permission, he hugged the Dementor tightly, but not only because of happiness that his father allowed the courtship, but also because he accepted Severus' own decisions and his promise to protect him even should his decision end in tragedy. What Severus couldn't imagine. Not long after, Severus fell asleep in his father's arms, who didn't show any signs to let him go. So Hadrian retreated to his own room after wishing a good night to Dementor, who also watched him silently, giving Severus a kiss on the cheek. Lucius stared at the living vampire in utter disbelief. You can remove the dark mark? How? It's quite simple. The dark mark serves as a connection between master and slave. Slave? Squeaked Lucius, which caused Alucard to raise an eyebrow. What have you thought what it is? Don't you feel how it binds your own magic? It may be dormant at the moment, but that it's still there proves that the Dark Lord is still alive, which isn't much of a surprise if he created more than one Horcrux. Horcruxes, whispered a pale Lucius, even more so with each revelation. Merlin, how could I be so blind? Did Dad know? What about the blacks? Narcissa, sitting next to her husband, also pale, shook her head, though Lucius was muttering to himself and didn't even look at one of the others. Lord Black would have never sold his family into slavery, said Narcissa. Maybe, maybe not. The Dark Lord could have manipulated them. You just confirmed what I always thought, that you didn't even know what mark you're wearing. I can't imagine someone taking the dark mark freely. I can't speak for Lord Black, but from what I know about Lord Malfoy, it wouldn't even surprise me. He forced me to take the dark mark and hope my instincts will be triggered to see the Dark Lord as my protege. Well, that hadn't worked out. No, but it explains why I couldn't protect Severus. I was bound, as you put it. The dark mark hinders me to fight the Dark Lord. Then it'll be my pleasure to remove it, but you'll have to take precautions. If the Dark Lord returns, he'll come after you and your family, no matter if I put you under my protection. He will, sighed Lucius. Still, I want the dark mark gone, and there are others who would want it too. Indeed, your son mentioned it to my own when they talked. However, I won't accept everyone into my clan. I can remove their dark marks if wanted, but they will have to prove their loyalty. For you, I can make an exception due to the simple fact that you and Draco are bound to protect Severus. And I'll need your help with the ministry and school board. I may be one of those ancient creatures, but it had been a very long time that I had any business with the ministry. But it's time to remind them of the peace treaty and that creatures are part of a magical world and not just some mindless beings. Agreed. What do you exactly want me to do? Let's start simple. I want you to convince the school board to let me become a teacher in Hogwarts. I'll take Severus as my apprentice in potions, while my friend Master Hollerforth will take young Mr. Longbottom under his wings. Both children already agreed, as did their parents. Severus may have no memories of his previous life, but Lady Magic didn't remove his memories of potions. He's still the brilliant potion master as he had been before. I won't allow a disgrace like Lily Potter, who isn't worth the title of a potion master, to ruin his love in this subject. That won't be much of a problem. However, it won't be difficult to replace Lady Potter. No, I want the position of the next history professor. Dumbledore already tried to warn me about the ghost, but I told him that bins won't be a problem. Potter isn't my highest priority, but as mentioned in the Hogwarts Charter, professors can open a club. Therefore, I'll open up a potions club, where I can teach the students properly. Students will learn quickly how bad she is and will start writing to their parents. If parents start to complain about her, the board will be forced to replace her, and even Dumbledore can't do anything. Correct. I already contacted the Potions Guild and asked about her mastery. My gut tells me there isn't something adding up. I'll find out who her master had been and who the one was giving her the title of a potion master. Do you think she cheated? It's not the question if she cheated or not. You can't cheat in potions. Either you know what you're doing, or you don't. And she clearly has no idea. She might be able to brew the easiest of potions with the correct recipe, but to become a master, you have to brew potions from the scratch. You'll be given false instructions or ingredients. In short, there's no way to cheat. So either someone else took her place during the exams, or the examiner has been forced or bribed. I see. I'll be happy to help if you need it. I tried to prevent her assignment, but Dumbledore is good when it comes to manipulate or convincing people. And my reputation didn't help either, no matter how good my arguments are. Dumbledore is indeed a very unpredictable character. I can imagine that he's working from the shadows. So far, I can't say if he's just an old man who thinks doing the right thing or is playing a completely different game. But that's only when it comes to the political side. I definitely don't like how he's running the school. Therefore, we won't just work to replace one or two professors, but also the headmaster. Lucius' eyes went big. Don't be surprised. If I could, I'd replace him immediately, just to make sure to keep my son, and especially Severus, safe. Unfortunately, it isn't so easy because of his reputation. True, many like him, It doesn't matter that he's just a Wixen as anyone else with their right and wrongs. Even if he has good intentions, doesn't mean that he can't be wrong. Agreed. Alucard cast a quick spell to check the time. It's late. Think about everything we talked about and let me know how you want to proceed, especially about the mark. It won't be pleasant to remove it, but it can be done. You don't have to think about spying or anything. I have my own people who are more as capable to do it. Can we do it now? No. It might be easy, but I still need to prepare for it. You have to take a potion, and it'd be better if you haven't anything in your stomach. Meaning no drinking or eating for a day if possible. Not that it would hinder me to remove the mark, but well, I'd like to prevent being puked on. Alucard grimaced, as did Lucius. How long will you need to prepare the potion? And well, whatever you need. Not long, but I want to enjoy the next days with Hadrian and Severus. So, I suggest we do it after they and your own son return to Hogwarts. Fine for me. Would it be possible for us to meet Severus? Asked Narcissa. Not in the next few days, but we can arrange something in the summer. Alucard stood, and the two Malfoys accompanied him to the door. Before Alucard left, he gave them one more task. Make sure to find out who wants their mark removed, who wants to be included in my clan, and who might turn against us even if the mark is removed. I won't expose Severus to people who might be a possible threat. Both nodded and wished him a good night a second before Alucard vanished into the night. I can't believe it, Chissa. For the first time, I feel hope. For us, for Draco, for the world. Yeah, this time we won't let anyone harm our family, even if it means to kill my own sister, whispered Narcissa. When Alucard returned home, he found Dementor with a sleeping Severus in his arms floating around the mansion. Why are you outside? Does it matter? HMPF. Not really. How is our little one? Phoenix. Did Hadrian ask you about wanting to court Severus? Yes. I gave permission. They belong to each other. Life and death. I see. Well, I found out where the Elder Wand is. Dumbledore has it. I'll see if James Potter has the cloak in Hogwarts. The stone is still missing, but I assume Voldemort used it for one of his Horcruxes. What a fool, splitting his soul, like it would save him. Indeed. Bring them to me. His soul is mine. Dementor stretched out one of his claw hands with something shimmering in it. Is this? Yes. The piece of soul extracted from our angel. Find the other pieces. Once this soul is destroyed, the dark magic in Severus will go. I see. It won't be easy to find the other pieces, and I'm sure it involves a lot of nasty traps. But if I have them, then they are yours. Good. The rest of the night, Alucard and Dementor spend in silence or old memories. They didn't talk about the future. They knew what will happen if they fail, and if they succeed, well, time would tell. The next morning, Juna, Hadrian, and Severus sat in front of a big Christmas tree, opening their presents with Alucard, Elena, and Dementor watching. They watched especially the little dark angel, who seemed a little nervous when Hadrian put a small box into his hand. Inside the box was a ring, shimmering in silver and blue. It had no jewelries on it, but inside was an engrave in black. Forever mine, forever yours. Hadrian explained to Severus that the ring was a sign of their courtship, but had also several kinds of protection on it. He'd even wear it while brewing. He had asked his father to help, since he knew Severus was his mate. Severus accepted and let Hadrian slip it on his right ring finger. Severus felt bad to not having something in return, but when his gaze fell on his hair, he cut some strands and used his magic to form them into a bracelet. The others watched in fascination. Alucard and Dementor knew how powerful something woven from a death angel could be, especially when the death angel used something like his hair. Alucard explained it to Hadrian later in the afternoon when they watched Severus and Juna playing with Norbert. Dementor stayed for 2 more days before he returned to Azkaban. As expected, Severus had been very sad, but it helped not be alone. The days passed quickly. As promised, Alucard brewed together with Severus some potions, while Hadrian and Juna played with Norbert. Before they knew it, New Year came and passed, and it was time to return to Hogwarts. Back in Hogwarts. Chapter Notes. Edit by Trickster32. Hello, my dear readers. Have fun with the new chapter. The return to Hogwarts had been uneventful. People still stole some glances when they entered King's Cross, but nobody dared to come close. The Malfoys kept distance, because Lucius and Alucard agreed to hide their alliance for a little while. Draco would also protect Severus out of the shadows. It'd give them an advantage in the future when less people know about it. So far, no one knew about Draco's nature and his relation to Severus as protector. And the adults will keep it that way as long as they can. On the ride back to the castle, they shared a compartment with Neville and Hermione again. They talked about what everyone had done, what they had gotten as Christmas presents, or whatever else they had experienced. Exception was, of course, that Hadrian didn't mention with one word the Dementor. That was something else. No one needed to know, and Hadrian wasn't sure if even Neville would understand Severus' relation to them. As promised, Hermione had some books for Neville to learn more about the Muggle world and its history, while Neville had a book about traditions and their meanings for Hermione. Severus and Hadrian proudly presented their gifts from each other, and both Hermione and Neville whistled in amazement. "Does it mean that you're engaged now?" asked Hermione curiously. "Something like that. In the wizarding world, we call it a courtship. I talked with Severus already about it, but to make it officially, I needed the approval of Severus' parent, which I received. But aren't you much too young? Age has nothing to do with it. Everyone can ask for courtship. It's not a binding matter, even if there are some rules you have to follow. Like first, you have to ask the parents or guardians of your intended for permission to court their child. Once they do agree, you have the permission to make it officially, so everyone knows that these two are not open for another courtship. The rules to follow the courtship can vary, for example, what the length of the courtship will be, or if both want to have the chance to explore their sexuality with others before binding themselves to one person. Hermione made a face. For her, it sounded like cheating while being in a relationship. It's nothing to frown over, Hermione. Like you have your own belief how a relationship should be. Other may have another opinion about it. And in such a case of two children being in a courtship, it's most likely the parents that are making the rules. Most marriages are based on what the head of the families decide. For example, when two families would like to merge, then they can make a contract, which is connected to different conditions and rules. In the best-case scenario, the parents allow their children to enter a courtship should they feel something for each other. In the worst-case scenario, the feelings of the children will be ignored, and they will have to marry as soon as they reach maturity. That's cruel, I know, and I don't like it either. But to my knowledge, this kind of contract became less and less over time. Unfortunately, you may always have some exceptions. However, courtships initiated by children themselves were always rare, and most would just wait to reach maturity before asking their intended to court them. And if you pay attention, they aren't many among the children who are currently in a courtship, and those who are, they have already reached their maturity. And what about you? Why didn't you wait? Not that I'm not happy for you, but how do you know that Severus is your big love or vice versa? In our case, I know that Severus is my partner for life. My dragon recognizes him as my mate. That doesn't mean I'd force him into a marriage, of course, but to ask for a courtship will give me the opportunity to prove Severus and his guardians that I'm worthy, that I can protect and provide for him. But how do you know it's love? It sounds more like it's your instincts. That's difficult to explain to someone who isn't a creature. But it's another reason for the courtship. Just because my instincts say that Severus is my mate, it doesn't mean I own him or anything. The courtship will give us both the opportunity to find out if there is more as just instinct. Still, depending on your creature inheritance, mate doesn't mean always the same. For me as a dragon, I'll have only one mate. Others can have several mates. For some, a mate means only a person or creature who is most compatible with them, but nothing more. I see. So what will happen if Severus rejects you? Hadrian looked at Severus and then back to Hermione. Well, I'll either be alone my entire life or I'll just die. Oh, nature can be cruel, but as long as I don't fuck it up, there is no reason to be worried. You're very confident. Yes. When it comes to a dragon's mate, we're very determined. And just a fair warning, don't ever try to come between a dragon and his mate, especially if they're courting or have bonded. I assume it wouldn't end well for me? No, it wouldn't. You already know how protective I am. Wouldn't I have so much control about myself? Then Ron most likely would be already dead, growled Harry. Hermione flinched and a shiver ran down her spine when she saw Hadrian's eyes lit up to a bright gold for a brief second. The boy is truly lucky, agreed Neville. Yeah, for his own sake. I'd ask you to have an eye on him and, if possible, to shut his big mouth. Easier said than done, but for all our peace of mind, we'll stop him before he can do something stupid, nodded Neville in agreement. Yeah, I'll also try my best, promised Hermione. Hadrian, promise me not to kill someone just because of minor things. I don't want you to get hurt or getting in trouble," pleaded Severus, leaning more into Hadrian's side and staring into his eyes. "I'll try, Severus. That's all I can promise. But if whatever they're saying hurts you, or if they're hurting you physically, then they will feel my wrath." Fine. Then I'll try not being hurt to help you not to lose control." "You don't have to, Severus. I don't want you to hide your feelings. It's my job to let you feel safe. Maybe, but I don't want you to fight all my fights. Please give me the chance to defend myself. Ron is just a misguided, envious boy. Maybe, but that doesn't give him the right to hurt you. And he isn't the only one who's trying to hurt you. But I'll respect your wish and follow your lead. I'll only interfere when I deem it necessary." "Thank you." Severus gave Hadrian a kiss on his cheek before laying his head on his shoulder, smiling at the other two, who returned it. "Well then, let us hope the rest of the term won't be as turbulent than the first half had been," announced Neville with a loud clap, to which Hadrian can only nod. However, something was telling him that something bad was awaiting ahead of them. Tightening his grip around Severus' waist, Hadrian could only hope that he was strong enough for whatever was to come. 2 months later. "Does anyone know where Severus is?" asked Hadrian one afternoon. Professor Potter had given him a detention with Filch after another short, heated discussion during a flying lesson. The man couldn't stop to make nasty comments, and even if Hadrian promised to let Severus fight for himself, he couldn't watch the asshole insulting his mate any longer. So far, Severus had been fine whenever Professor Evans, Ron, or one of the other students made any comments. But James Potter was a complete other matter. Severus wasn't just uncomfortable when the man was close, but utterly terrified of him. Hadrian assumed that Severus unconsciously recognized Potter. Even if he couldn't remember, the trauma was still there, deeply rooted somewhere back in his mind. Hadrian couldn't tell what exactly Severus had to endure in his previous life, but what he knew was bad enough. And from what happened in today's class, Hadrian wished Potter was dead. Flashback. At first, Hadrian just watched, wanted to give Severus a chance to stand up against the man, but everything went down when James called him suddenly Snivellus. Before anyone knew what happened, Severus pulled out his wand and pointed it at the man, who had his own wand in hand. Hadrian and Draco were the only ones fast enough to step between them, Draco facing the adult with his own wand in hand, while Hadrian faced Severus. One look in his silver eyes was enough for Hadrian to know that his mate was lost in his mind. This disgusted nickname triggered something else in Severus, which even Hadrian did not reckon with. A small part felt even proud about it, knowing that Severus had fought back in his previous life, but the bigger part of him was worried. So he did what he felt was the best, and slowly wrapped his arms around Severus and covered him as much as he could. When Severus came back from wherever he had been, his whole body began to shake, and Madame Hoochigan was forced to escort him to the infirmary. Hadrian watched them until they disappeared into the castle. Then he turned to the adult, who just announced, pointing a wand against the professor, "Mr. Malfoy, how dare you? Detention, the rest of the year, and 100 points from Slytherin." "He dares? How dare you to call a student an improper name? How dare you to point your own wand against an 11-year-old student who wouldn't have done much damage as let? You maybe giggle like a girl. How dare you? I'm so close to rip you apart," snarled Hadrian, eyes a bright gold, which let everyone take a step back, except Draco, Neville, and Hermione. "You dare to reprimand and threaten a professor? Detention with Mr. Filch for a month, Mr. Potter. Why don't give me the same punishment that you have given Draco? He doesn't even have done anything to you. Expect to point a wand at you. I think I just threatened you as much as he did, when not even more, because, believe me, I meant what I said. Fine. Both of you have the rest of the term detention, but not together. I'll refrain from taking points this time, but do that again, and I'll see you expelled from the school." The man huffed and turned around to leave. "He has to go, Hadrian, or we have to find a way to keep him away from Severus," whispered Draco. "I'll write to Father. He'll know what to do. I'm glad he'll join the staff next term. Both Potters will wish to have died the night Voldemort had come to their home." "Yeah, I agree," growled Hadrian. End of flashback. "No, I haven't seen him since our flying lesson." "Isn't he still in the infirmary?" answered Neville. "No, I was just there to pick him up for dinner. But the infirmary was empty, so I just came here believing Severus might already be here. Maybe he went back to the Gryffindor Tower. Shall we go look there? I haven't seen Severus either. I'm just coming from there," said another student. Hadrian got nervous. He looked over to the Slytherin table. Draco wasn't there either. However, Draco had been given a detention with Hagrid. Another trip into the forest, even though it wasn't safe. I saw Professor Potter leaving the infirmary with him, said Lavender. What? Hadrian jumped in front of her, grabbing her collar and pulling her closer. When? Half a hour ago. Heard Professor Potter saying that Severus would have detention with Hagrid the rest of the year. Hadrian didn't listen to anything what was being said after that, nor did he hear the outrage of the others. His instincts were screaming. Severus was sent to Hagrid. Hagrid, who planned another trip into the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid, who is nice, but has no mind of dangers to the students. His only comfort was that Draco was there as well. But Hadrian doubted that Hagrid would this time allow them to split up, so that Draco might be able to keep Severus out of the forest. And there was still this monster killing unicorns. Hadrian ran faster, hoping he wouldn't be too late. The monster in the Forbidden Forest. Chapter summary. Severus finds a new friend. Unfortunately, he also has an encounter with a monster hunting unicorns. Will Hadrian be fast enough to save him? Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Hey guys. Sorry for the delay. Again, a great thank you for all your comments and kudos. I'm happy that so much people like it. I hope I didn't mess up completely. I already posted it, but deleted it shortly after, because I didn't check what I wrote in Chapter 6 until I already posted this one. Maybe I was fast enough, and no one of you saw it yet. Grinning face with sweat, let me know in your comments, should there be still something making no sense, which I truly hope not. So evil monkey. Otherwise, have fun with a new chapter. See the end of the chapter for more notes. I don't know why James thought it a good idea to send you two to me. Unfortunately, I can't go against the professor's wish for punishment. But I assure that you don't have to worry. The centaurs keep their watch. Severus and Draco followed Hagrid into the Forbidden Forest. Draco was tense and kept his attention on their surroundings, which wasn't easy with the fog hanging in the air and only allowing them to see freely a few meters ahead. Luckily, Draco had sharp ears, which allowed him to even hear a snap of a twig 100 meters away. The forest was quiet, too quiet for his taste, and therefore kept close to his charge. Hagrid didn't seem to notice and went deeper into forest with them in tow, while Fong kept close to the boys. Not that it didn't matter. Yes, the dog wasn't a puppy, but despite his size, Fong was a coward. Draco didn't count on it that the dog would defend them should the need arise. HM. That's strange. What? We should be close to one of the herds, but I can't see any tracks. Maybe they fled after the last time. Ron told us about the creature, which he accused to be Vol, the Dark Lord, feeding on a death unicorn. Death unicorn? There wasn't a death unicorn, not even a living one. I'm not even sure why he was talking about this creature. We weren't even close to where we found the first dead unicorn. What do you mean? Ron said, the creature attacked you, and you ordered Ron to flee. You and your friend didn't even deny it, as you surely can remember. And you said you shouldn't have taken us into forest, that you didn't have expected something like this. Hagrid stopped in astonishment. Well, I meant that I didn't have expected to run into a couple of centaurs with a newborn. This can be very dangerous. They're very protective after all, especially of their young. When we run into them, the female was lying on the ground, curled around her newborn child. When I remember correctly, her mate went up. When he noticed us, he had laid next to her, so he wasn't visible at first. When he lifted his upper body and saw us, he stood up quickly. Ron ran at that moment, before I could advise him to stay calm, that everything was fine. So in short, Ron startled when the centaur went up beside his mate, mistaking it as a creature just letting up from its prey, and panicked. And the centaur we met as well was the one helping you. And why did you talk like you actually run into this dark creature? Oh, that was Torvis, another of the centaur colony living in the forest. He's one of many helping me to find the creature killing the unicorns. The other two had been on their way back from another part of the forest when the female got into labor. When we finally caught up with you, we heard Ron speaking about this dangerous creature, so we thought you talked about it. Honestly, it seemed we misunderstood as well and just went with it. Not that it was unimportant what Torvis told you. Maybe he even knew that Ron misinterpreted the complete situation and used it to his advantage. Shrugged Hagrid. What a stupid idiot, muttered Draco under his breath. What was it? Asked Hagrid. Nothing. So what are we doing now? Wait, where is Severus? Again, Hagrid turned, just to see that the other boy wasn't where he had been just a second ago. That's not good. Not good? Not good? This is a catastrophe. We have to find him now. Hagrid reared back at the small Slytherin's outburst. For a moment, he thought to see the boy's eyes turning purple, but dismissed it quickly. Please stay calm. He can't be far. We're in the Forbidden Forest and can see anything because of this fog. Who knows in which direction he went? Don't say to be calm. Severus is my protege. It's my responsibility to keep him safe, especially when Hadrian isn't there. Damn it, Hadrian will kill me, muttered Draco, ignoring Hagrid, who looked very confused. Draco took some deep breaths, reminding himself that panic wouldn't solve anything. Deep in concentration and with eyes closed, Draco listened to the silence of the forest. For several minutes he couldn't detect anything, just hearing his and Hagrid's breath. Wait, where is Fong? Oh, seems he isn't here either. Draco could just stare in disbelief at the half-giant. Don't look at me like this. Fong knows the forest by heart. He will find his way back blindfolded. Just when he wanted a response, Draco heard the snap of a twig and turned around from where it had come. It wasn't close, but not far away either. Without hesitation, he began to run in that, ignoring Hagrid's shouts. There was no time. Finding Severus was his highest priority right now. Consequences be damned. Severus stood in the middle of a small clearing. He had listened to the conversation between Draco and Hagrid, but something had caught his attention and let him stop. He stared into the fog where he thought having seen a white shimmer. When he saw it again, he unconscious followed. Then it was gone, and Severus again stopped, being there where he was now. Turning in expectations the others had followed him. He finally realized he was alone. Well, not completely alone because Fong sat at his side. Not to forget Norbert, who was flying next to his head, sniffing the air and inspecting their surroundings, while Dante still hung in Severus' hair. I fear we got lost. Any idea which direction leads us back to the others? Severus, too, tried to see from where he had come, but everything looked the same. Then something beautiful stepped into the clearing. Severus had never seen a unicorn, but from the descriptions it was one. They stared at each other for a long minute. Norbert settled down around Severus' neck again, looking suspicious at the newcomer. Fong, on the other hand, wagged his tail in excitement, not moving from Severus' side though. Hi. The unicorn titled its head. Are you alone? Severus leaned sideways, trying to see behind the unicorn if there were others. But it seems to be alone. It's dangerous. You shouldn't be alone. There are rumors that something is hunting your kind. The unicorn stepped forward until it was close enough to put its nostrils against Severus' forehead, sniffing and huffing. Severus giggled and tried to shove it back a little. Stop it. It tickles. The unicorn ignored him. When Norbert hissed, it just huffed at him as well, which caused Norbert to hide under Severus' silver-blue hair. After all, the unicorn was huge, almost twice the height of Severus when it stood straight. I like you too, but we should try to find your friends. I'm just not sure where even to start, though. It's my first time in the forest, you know, and I shouldn't be on my own either, but I got separated from Draco and Hagrid. I don't know where they are. Severus sighed and let his arms fall to his sides, looking at the ground in slight desperation. The unicorn, feeling his uneasiness, pushed its head under Severus' chin, careful not to hurt him with the horn. Severus wrapped his arms around the unicorn's neck. Shall we search for them all together? I'm sure Hagrid will be a better help to find your friends than me. He's a half-giant, you. No, I'm sure. A gruesome, not human scream echoed through the forest and sent shivers down Severus' spine. The unicorn let out a desperate whimper and started to run in the direction of the noise. Wait! Severus ran as fast as he could, but soon it was out of sight, and Severus desperately whirled around to find it. Then another scream echoed through the forest, right from behind him, and let him whirl around so fast that he almost fell. The fog cleared and revealed the same unicorn lying on the ground, something moving next to it. Fong whimpered and ran off, while Norbert growled deeply. That drew the attention of whatever it was at them. Severus watched how a dark figure rose, jumping over the unicorn and landing a few feet away from him. Severus couldn't recognize who it was, the face hidden under the hood, but he could tell that it wasn't a creature. Call it his instincts. When it came closer, it lifted their arms, in one hand a wand. However, before the figure could attack, Hadrian jumped in front of Severus, his own wand in hand, and casting a strong flipendo, which let the figure fly back several feet. "Leave him alone," growled Hadrian, eyes shining a bright, threatening gold. "Hadrian, don't worry, Severus. I'll protect you." "Hadrian, the unicorn. We must help it." Hadrian risked a quick glance at the non-moving unicorn. He couldn't see if it was still alive or already dead. Not without being closer, but he couldn't focus on it, not yet. He can give Severus the chance, though. "Go! I'll take care of that thing." They moved in unison, Severus behind Hadrian, who didn't turn away from the threat. Unfortunately, the figure retreated into the fog, after observing them for a moment. Hadrian swore, moving closer to Severus, who was now kneeling next to the unicorn. Severus pulled out his wand as well, while Norbert lifted into the air, watching his back. That gave Severus the chance to inspect the wound on the unicorn's neck. The neck was covered in blood and there was a deep gash. Before Severus could do anything, however, a flash of fire filled his vision. Severus whirled around, seeing the fireball Norbert breathed, being dodged and directed back at the dragon, who shrieked in surprise before falling with a pained cry. Severus was fast enough to catch Norbert. That, however, brought him closer to the attacker. Before it could hit him, Hadrian managed to cast a quick Protego. The impact was strong enough to create a shock wave, which pushed Severus and the enemy away in opposite directions. Severus fell back against the unicorn's head, not noticing how the horn pierced his skin on the right arm. Then there was suddenly Draco standing next to Hadrian, falling at his other side. Both shared a quick glance, nodding at each other. The figure seemed determined and prepared for another attack when suddenly a centaur jumped between them, front hooves high in the air and forcing the dark figure back. Snarling, it withdrew into the forest and disappeared into the air. The centaur turned to the boys. "You shouldn't be here. This part of the forest is too dangerous for children even without this threat." "Do tell," snarled Hadrian, still staring at the point where the figure had disappeared and eyes still golden. He was mad. Honestly and truly mad. "Hadrian, you're his protector. Where have you been?" Draco sunk his head in shame. "I'm sorry. There is no excuse. I was distracted. Hagrid was telling us what happened the last time when we were in the forest, that Ron mistook the situation they run into. When I turned around, Severus was gone." "You're right. There is no excuse, but it's not entirely your fault either. I shouldn't have left Severus alone. I'd have known Potter would go after Severus." "What a mess," muttered Draco. "We can argue all day who's at fault. At the end, it won't change anything. We are here. Luckily, you found Severus in time. I'll train even more so something like this won't happen again." Hadrian huffed. "I'll make sure it won't happen again. That asshole will die." Wow. You can't just kill a professor," intervened Hagrid, having heard the last part when he came closer. "Try me," snarled Hadrian. Hagrid stopped in slight shock, not having expected Hadrian to snarl at him. "Hadrian?" Severus' voice brought Hadrian out of his rage, which immediately was replaced with worry when he saw Severus kneeling on the ground, a bloody hand on the unicorn's neck, while holding Norbert close to his chest with his other arm. Quickly, Hadrian went down next to Severus, inspecting his body for any injuries. When he saw a dark red spot on his right arm, he cursed. "Shit, you're injured. We must help her." "Her?" Hadrian followed Severus' gaze when he nodded to the unicorn. "She's still breathing, but it's getting weaker. I can feel it. And Norbert is also injured." There was so much worry in Severus' eyes, tears forming in the corner of his eyes, that it broke Hadrian's heart. "Let me." Severus lifted his head, meeting the eyes of the centaur, going down next to the unicorn's other side across from him. Severus removed his bloody hand to give access. There was so much blood that it was difficult to even determine the extent of the wound. Severus and Hadrian used the moment to examine Norbert. It seemed that one of his wings was broken, but nothing else. Severus cradled Norbert against his chest, while they watched in silence the centaur's examination, only interrupted by a short, "I'm Forenza," and her name is Celeste. After several more minutes, Forenza frowned. "That's strange. What? Is everything okay?" asked Severus, leaning forward to see what the problem might be. Forenza stared at the small silver-blue hair boy, before turning his gaze at Hadrian, who stared right back at him, followed by Draco, whose gaze was on Severus' right arm. Forenza followed Draco's gaze and saw the blood. Forenza lowered his gaze at Severus' right sleeve and free hand, the same hand he had held on Celeste's wound. Hadrian observed the centaur, followed his gaze, and quickly turned back, just to see a brief moment of realization. Hadrian wondered, but before he could utter a question, Forenza said, "She'll be fine. The wound isn't as bad as it looks like, and it's already healing. She'll be recover quickly." Forenza met Hadrian's gaze, and the boy was sure the centaur was hiding something, or at least didn't want to reveal anything to people he didn't know, or who didn't know what Severus actually was. Hadrian understood, gave a slight nod, and titled his head in direction of Draco. Forenza narrowed his eyes and titled his head in direction of Hagrid, which was answered by a slight head shake. "Where is her family? She shouldn't be alone out here." Unaware, Severus interrupted the silent conversation while stroking Celeste's head. "They're not far away. I was searching for her. We led the herd away for their protection, but I noticed, unfortunately too late, that Celeste had disappeared before we reached the place where this creature wouldn't be able to attack them. I can just imagine that she used the short commotion among the herd to disappear while we're distracted." Seems I'm not the only one who lost his charge today. What a strange coincidence." Forenza looked at Draco. The boy didn't sound mocking. Neither was there any amusement in his features. "Indeed, the stars can tell us a lot, but only what they want to reveal to us. Regardless, someone must look at young Severus' arm." Severus looked confused at the centaur. Following the finger pointed at his arm, Severus' eyes widened and his mouth forming a quiet "oh." "Let me have a look." This was Draco's clue to went down next to Severus. Carefully, he pushed the sleeve up, revealing a deep gash. "He needs another visit in the infirmary. The wound is deep, and there is a worrying amount of blood. My mother taught me a few things about healing, but I'm not able to treat a wound like this yet." He tore a piece of his own sleeve off and wrapped it around Severus' arm, but not before casting a simple cleaning spell. Hadrian stood up, reaching out to help Severus up as well. Dizziness overcame the smaller boy, and he stumbled forward into Hadrian's arms. Draco followed quickly and was ready to catch Norbert, which was unnecessary. Even in his state, Severus' grip around Norbert was tight. "Hagrid, lead them back to Hogwarts and let the headmaster know that I don't want to see another student in the forest, especially after sunset. You don't call it Forbidden Forest without a reason. Remind him if necessary. If he loves the life of his students, he'll stop to allow his employees to send students into the forest, even with a professor or you as a guardian. There are other options to punish a student. You can still be lucky that Magnus didn't kill you when you run into him and his mate with this redhead boy." "Will do, Forenza. Thank you, my friend, for rescuing the students. You have no idea what would have happened when those two students hadn't arrived before me. You have been lucky, Hagrid. Be careful whom you trust in the future." Forenza leaned down, moving his mouth close to Hadrian's ear. "The stars warned us about the return of a great evil. Torvis told you about it. But they also told us of Lady Magic's chosen and his guardians. Don't tell anyone about your realization when you observed me. Not even your father, at least not via writing. Otherwise, send your father my greetings and that he shall visit our tribe as soon as he joins Hogwarts as a professor. I'll explain it myself then." Forenza withdrew a little to look into Hadrian's eyes. The boy nodded in understanding. Then the centaur lowered his gaze at Severus. "Don't worry about Celeste. I promise you will see her again." "Thank you, Mr. Forenza. Do you think I can visit her? I mean outside of the Forbidden Forest? I fear not until the current threat to the unicorns is gone. And if she even wants to meet me again," mumbled Severus sadly. "Oh, young Mr. Prince. She wouldn't have revealed herself to you if she wouldn't have liked you. So, please don't worry. Don't forget I promised you'll see her again, didn't I?" You have." Severus' eyes felt heavy, and he leaned harder into Hadrian, who without further ado lifted him into his arms. Oh, there was another scream. I mean before Celeste ran off. She seemed desperate when she heard it. Was there another unicorn missing?" Forenza closed his eyes. "Not a unicorn. That monster uses a spell to imitate an injured unicorn as a bait. Unicorns are very loyal and would never leave one of their own alone. Celeste must have thought it was one of the others and run off to help them." I see. That's good though. Then it means there isn't an injured or dead unicorn out there. No, you should leave now. Severus nodded, the relief visible in his hazed eyes. Just when they turned, they heard a whimper. Looking over their shoulders, they saw Celeste lifting her head in their direction. Hadrian, deciding to give Severus a chance to say goodbye for the time being, went over and carefully kneeled. Celeste lightly nudged Severus' outstretched hand. Bye, Celeste. Stay safe and rest well. May we see each other again when the danger to you and your family is over. Severus' voice lowered, was barely a whisper at the end, before he finally lost consciousness. We have to go. Draco laid a hand on Hadrian's shoulder. Yes. Goodbye, Celeste. I promise to take good care of him. He's my mate after all. Hadrian smiled, stood, and then run as fast as he could in direction of Hogwarts. Chapter and notes. I hope you liked it. At first I considered Hadrian arriving too late and finding an unconscious and very injured Severus. But then I thought it would be too much. There will be a lot more dangerous situation, and for Hadrian always arriving too late would truly give a bad picture. And I don't want for Severus to be the damsel and mistress, not capable to fight back, even if there will be other situation where it will look like this. But considering that he is the center of it all, I can't help it. But he will learn to defend himself as well. Don't worry. His old self, after all, was also a great duelist. At least he didn't show any fear. After all, how could Voldy compare with having Dementors as parents? Until next time, Alucard's Mark. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Dear readers, have fun with the new chapter. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Where is he? Alucard stepped into the headmaster's office, furious. Lord Tempest, I didn't expect a visit. May I ask? The headmaster fell back into his chair, Alucard looming over him. Save yourself the questions. You know very well why I'm here. Mr. Potter went too far. I warned you. Warned him to stay away from Severus. But no. First Mr. Potter bullies him, and then sent him into the Forbidden Forest as punishment. The same forest, where something is killing unicorns, and even the centaurs aren't able to catch it. The same forest which inhabitants consist of creatures just waiting for children to get lost and volunteer themselves as the next meal. Lord Tempest. Professor Potter told me Severus drew his wand and almost attacked him. This led to another student also pulling his wand and pointing it at the same professor. This can't happen in my school. Students attacking a professor. And what about professors who harass, bully, and insult their students? Who's protecting the students from them? My professors do not such things. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Alucard reared back in disbelief. I think I didn't hear correctly. Would you repeat yourself? My professors are all honorable and trustworthy people. All of them, I choose myself. I wouldn't hire someone who is a danger to the students. Alucard laughed bitterly. You must be senile or blind. Or maybe your understanding of honorable and trustworthy are different to that of common people. Lord Tempest, I understand that you're upset, but that doesn't mean you can insult me. What happened was an accident. Hagrid wasn't meant to lead the students into the forest. Mr. Potter assured me to have reminded Hagrid to keep the students out of the forest. And you believe him, of course. It doesn't matter. This incident was the last straw. Remove Mr. Potter from Hogwarts or I'll kill him. Here and now. Alucard's eyes glowed deep red. Dumbledore opened his mouth, just to shut it immediately as Alucard extended his sharp fangs. I'll call Mr. Potter. I have a better idea. Call all your staff, including the half-giant, and any other employees you have. Do it, snarled Alucard. Inwardly, Dumbledore was raging, but knew he had no chance against the living vampire. He was losing control since those two boys entered his school. He hadn't imagined that the creatures of old would ever show up again or start to interfere. Harry was meant to grow up with his relatives in the Muggle world, not to get adopted from a living vampire. He would have learned of his parents being alive when it was time for him to return to the wizarding world. He was meant to love, to listen, to never questioning them. He would want to follow them, to fight with them. With Voldemort's return, Harry would be determined to protect them. He was the boy who lived, after all. He was the only one who would be able to defeat the Dark Lord. Now, Dumbledore didn't doubt that Harry wouldn't fight against Voldemort, but he was afraid that Harry would not stop to fight him as well, or his order. He had hoped Harry would become friends with Ron, But that boy was insufferable in Harry's eyes. And Molly's hope of Ginny marrying Harry, despite of creature inheritance, was destroyed the moment Harry revealed that he was adopted and was no longer a Potter. Lily and James had agreed to a marriage contract after years of not being able to produce another heir. This contract was now null and void, and the chance that Harry might ever develop an interest in Ginny as soon as she would join Hogwarts next term was destroyed the moment Severus Prince entered the picture. And as if that wasn't enough, James and Lily's behavior would have made everything much more complicated. Of course, Dumbledore knew about their flaws, that Lily wasn't a very good potion master, or that James' hate against Slytherin never ceased. More the opposite. Still, they were his friends. They were part of his order. Lily was his best option when Slughorn decided to finally retire. And James needed a job when he lost his position among the Aurors because of the injuries he received when Voldemort had attacked them. They never were able to find out what exactly Voldemort did, but from that day on, James' magical core weakened ever so slightly until he was almost a mere squib, only being able to call a broom or use simple spells, which of course they were hiding from the world. Only the members of the Order knew about it. The healer had been obliviated after giving the diagnose by Dumbledore himself. That was also the reason why Dumbledore thought this was all a misunderstanding. James wouldn't risk a fight, lest would he fight against children, at least not when it wasn't a child attacking him first. This was all a mess. A knock on his door brought Dumbledore out of his thoughts. He called for them to enter and watch them. Most have grim faces, which wasn't a good sign. The only one missing was Poppy, which Minerva answered with saying, "Headmaster, you called us and here we are?" Still, I must excuse Madame Pomfrey because she keeps an eye on young Mr. Prince, who is still unconscious. Dumbledore glanced at Alucard, who had his eyes on James, who was sweating, which again wasn't a good sign. "Thank you, Minerva." "Lord Tempest, I hope you can excuse Madame Pomfrey. Or would you prefer her being here?" "No. Her excuse is reasonable, and I'd be more upset if she'd have left her patient. If this is over, I'll go to infirmary and speak with her then." Alucard never removed his gaze from James, who tried to hide behind the others, aware of the danger he was in. "I assume you all are smart enough to guess why I'm here. For those who don't know, let me explain. Not even 2 hours ago, I received message from my son, Hadrian Peverell, that Severus Prince and Draco Malfoy were sent to Mr. Hagrid, who took them into the Forbidden Forest. Everyone turned to Hagrid, who looked down ashamed. When Hadrian heard about it, he immediately ran and arrived just in time to stop whoever is hunting and killing unicorns to attack Severus. Alucard explained what Hadrian had written and was pleased when Professor McGonagall asked, "Hagrid, why did you take them into the Forbidden Forest? Didn't we say that no student should be taken into the forest anymore?" "I'm sorry. I didn't know. The boys came to me with a letter. It said that they're half to detention for the rest of the term because they attacked a professor. As punishment, I was allowed to take them into the forest. I hadn't planned to go very far. But I'm sorry. It was my fault. I just wanted to show them the herd, but the centaurs had moved the unicorns to a new location. I wasn't aware of it." Hagrid had tears in his eyes. Before he continued, Phileas asked him, "Who was the professor, Hagrid? Who gave permission to take the students into the forest?" "Professor Potter, James." The staff turned to the man, who crossed his arms in defense. They pointed their wands at me. It was a clear attempt of trying to harm a professor. "TSK. Maybe you should explain more precisely. If I remember correct, you again mocked Mr. Prince in my class." "That's no excuse to point a wand at a professor, Madam Hooch," defended Lily, her husband. "And there is no excuse for a professor bullying his students. I told him often enough to stop this. Unfortunately, I'm not able to kick him out. He's constantly antagonizing the Slytherins, laughing at students when they fail to perform correctly. He makes everyone nervous. I have more accidents in my class when he's there." "James, she's exaggerating. I do nothing of the sort. It's not my fault when students have no talent to fly a broom or can't even simply call one. Maybe Madam Hooch is going soft after all these years. I can't remember her being considerate when I was a student." "Excuse me? Please, Lord Tempest. There is no reason to question my decisions. James might be hot-headed sometimes, but he has a good heart. He wants just the best for our world." "He's kidding, right?" whispered Professor Aurora Sinistra to Professor Pomona Sprout. "Enough. What is Mr. Potter's task exactly? That's not your business, scoffed James. He's coaching the Quidditch teams, well, except of Slytherin. In this regard, Mr. Potter assists Madam Hooch as flying instructor, answered McGonagall. Why is he a professor when he's just an assistant and trainer? Good question. I also wondered, murmured Hooch. Again, why is it your business? Because several professors gasped when Alucard suddenly appeared in front of James and shoved him against the nearest wall. I was deciding how important you are for this school, and I just concluded that there isn't any reason why the headmaster is keeping you. You're incompetent, arrogant, biased, and more important, you're a danger to the children. Here is my last warning for all of you. With one swift move, Alucard bit in his own hand and pressed it against James' forehead. At first, nothing happened, but then James screamed in agony. See it as restraining order. Whenever you come too close to Hadrian or Severus, your skin and blood will begin to burn. The headmaster seems adamant to keep you. Fine. Shall he has his way. Stop it. What are you doing? Screamed Lily. Making sure that your husband is no longer a danger. He's lucky that I haven't killed him, snarled Alucard. What he didn't say was that James was forever marked as an enemy to creatures. His scent would change. Not enough a human would notice. But for all creatures with a sensitive nose, James' scent will have a hint of danger, not trustworthy. Other creatures will recognize the mark, giving away the same statement. When Alucard stepped back, Phileas breathed sharply, hiding his understanding behind a cough. Let it be a warning for all of you. I was serious when I said I protect those under my protection. I won't forbid you to punish them if it's appropriate, but should someone try to hurt them, or take them to a place like the Forbidden Forest ever again, then I'll kill that person. No matter what. Feel free to contact me if you're unsure. Next term will be very easy. What do you mean? Asked Professor with shade of babbling. I'll take the position as history professor. Headmaster Dumbledore should already have received a notice from the school board. Be assured that I won't interfere in your lessons or your punishments, as I just said. I even give you a list with the students currently under my protection. If they do something you think needs punishment but feels uncomfortable to do so because of my warning, then send them to me with a note what they have done, and I'll take care of it. How do we know that you won't just cuddle them and favorite them over all other students? Accused Lily. You mean like you? Me? I have no favorite student. No. You favor an entire house and ignore the students of the other houses, or in case of Slytherin, remove more house points or give harsher punishment. Scoffed Professor. Septima vector to Lily's shock. What? Did you think we were all blind? I, for my part, am glad that Lord Tempest put you and your husband into place. I was already considering quitting. Septima? Asked Dumbledore, shocked. The woman turned to him. Albus, I understood why you offered this to a place among the Hogwarts staff and employees. But their attitude is poisoning. They're thinking of all Slytherin as being evil, while Gryffindors can't do any wrong. Might I remember that it was a Slytherin saving the Longbottoms and the Potters? Might I remember that it was a Ravenclaw killing a Muggle-born in Diagon Alley? You may forget it was the same Slytherin who run to his lord in the first place, telling him about the prophecy, yelled James. And he still came back and warned you. He still sacrificed himself that you could live. Shall we speak about why he joined you-know-who in the first place? I'm so fed up with all of it. You declare children as evil just because they are sorted into Slytherin or because of their parents. What about your friend Sirius Black? Why was he the only one you gave a chance to prove that he isn't like the rest of his family? Not that it didn't stop him from killing Muggles in the end. Everyone was silent at Septima's outburst. Alucard was pleased, though. He hadn't expected so much displeasure among the staff. He could see that others shared the professor's opinion, and that Dumbledore was completely shocked about it. Well, I'm glad to see that there is still common sense among your staff, Headmaster. I'm looking forward to work with people who know that evil isn't based on in which house you are sorted. I think we're done here today. Or is there something else you wanted to share, Lord Tempest? Dumbledore's voice was void of any emotions, but behind the mask was a storm raging. That was all. I'll make a quick visit to the infirmary to make sure my son and Severus are fine, as well as Norbert. Mr. Clayton had been informed. By coincidence, he was in London and immediately came over. He confirmed that the dragon has a broken wing, but nothing else. Announced Minerva, who had been in the infirmary at the time. Very good. I'll leave you then." Without waiting for a response, Alukard disappeared. Hadrian sat beside Severus' bed in the infirmary, holding a limp hand. Norbert was cuddling into Severus' side, one wing bandaged. Poppy had taken care of Severus as soon as Hadrian kicked the doors to the infirmary open. It was 3 in the morning when they came running, so Hadrian was also a little surprised that the Medi-Witch was ready. Hadrian had sent a fire message to Mr. Clayton as soon as possible and was happy when the man appeared just half an hour later, escorted by Professor McGonagall. It was good because Norbert was distressed and barely able to move. It was almost time for breakfast when Hadrian was able to send a letter to his father, explaining what had happened. He really hoped his father would kill Potter, because Hadrian wasn't sure if he'd be able to keep himself in check if he sees the man again. The first time Hadrian breathed out in relief was when Mr. Clayton that Norbert was fine, except of a broken wing, which they already assumed because of its weird angle. They had been more worried about any other injuries they couldn't see, but Mr. Clayton reassured that Norbert had no other wounds and would be up and about in no time. In the meanwhile, Madame Pomfrey had removed Severus' clothes and replaced them with a gown after cleaning and taking care of his injuries. She also gave Severus some blood-replenishing potion. When she was done, Madame Pomfrey examined Draco and Hadrian. Except of some scratches, they were fine though. Now, it was a little after breakfast when Hadrian lifted his head to see his father entering the infirmary. A smile formed around his lips. "Please tell me you killed the bastard." "Good morning to you too, son." "And no, I didn't kill him." "What? Why not?" Hadrian's smile disappeared and was replaced by a frown. "Because he and his wife will help us to remove the headmaster." TSK. "And what about Severus? Will you let him hurt Severus further to reach that goal?" "Don't be stupid, Hadrian. I marked this man for life. He'll never come near you or Severus ever again without burning to ashes. No creature will ever trust him. They all will know that this man means danger and have permission to kill him should he ever try to harm them." "Oh, you more or less declared him as an outlaw." "Nice. Yes. Furthermore, he'll be the perfect example for any other Wixen, thinking they can do what they want. That doesn't mean I won't hesitate to kill another Wixen, but I want them to realize that we don't kill without a reason. I gave already several warnings. This is the last. All other professors are aware of it, even if only the half-goblin knows what the mark means entirely." "You mean your friend, Professor Flitwick?" "I don't know what you mean." "Fine. Keep your secrets. But I know that he knows what or who Severus is." "Maybe. And I can tell that you can trust him. However, for the moment, let us pretend that I have no connection to him. It might be an advantage." "Fine. I can't wait until this term is over. I need a break, and my instincts are telling me that something else will happen." "Yeah. I think whoever attacked you is trying to steal what Dumbledore keeps hidden in the castle. The Philosopher's Stone." "HM? Interesting." "Yes, especially when the Centaur was right, and it's truly the Dark Lord killing the unicorns. I just couldn't find out how he's doing it." "We? Nothing. Let me handle it. You'll keep your distance. Make sure that Severus is never alone with that man." "Oh, I'll never move from Severus' side for the foreseeable future." "Good. Let me know when he wakes up. I have to return home." "Okay. Give Juno a kiss from me and send greetings to Elizabeth." "Sure. Be careful." Alucard kissed Hadrian on the forehead and did the same to Severus. On his way out, he spoke some words with Pomfrey, and with a last wave to his son, he was gone. A short time later, Severus finally woke up. Chapter in notes. Most of you might be annoyed now that I didn't kill James, but I still need him as an annoying character faced with tears of joy. The calm before the storm. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. My dear readers, we've almost reached the end of the first year. However, the final challenge will happen in next chapter. Until then, have fun with this short review of what happened since the attack in the forest. And I wish everyone a nice weekend. 3 months passed, and it was now the beginning of June. Hadrian was satisfied, even if still a little bit unhappy about his father's decision to keep Potter alive. On the other hand, to see Potter flinching, writhing in pain, and swearing whenever he came too close was great. It let his inner dragon growl in satisfaction, knowing that Severus was safe, at least from this man. Flying lessons were much more fun, and Severus was more relaxed than ever, which was mirrored by his improvements with calling the broom and also his self-esteem to fly higher than 2 meters above the ground. Some even wished that Severus was in their flying lesson as well, when it would mean that Potter would stay away. Madame Hooch only could do so much to keep the man away, but Potter more often ignored her than to listen, even if he wasn't interested to teach the other houses. The other good thing about giving Potter the mark was that everyone understood the warning. In Potion, Lily Potter ignored Severus completely, and while students still threw things into other cauldrons, they refrained from messing with Severus brewing, especially after Ron received a black eye from Hadrian, who needed a little more convincing as others. After that, Ron antics became less, having realized that no one was interested in his opinion about Slytherins or the unfair treatment of the Potters. Meanwhile, Norbert was spoiled even more as usual during the month of his recovering. His broken wing healed without any complications thanks to Mr. Clayton. The man visited twice every week until he declared Norbert healthy. He also praised how well Norbert is taken care of, especially when between one of his visits, Norbert had a growth spurt. Almost overnight, Norbert grew twice as long as Severus was high, with his head reaching Severus' middle without stretching. Unfortunately, that meant Norbert couldn't longer hide under Severus' robes, and due to his injury, they refrained using a spell to minimize him. Luckily, Norbert behaved very well, so no teacher had any complaints to let the dragon participate, well, with exception of Professor Evans, of course. However, Severus didn't want Norbert in the potions class either, worried about all the fumes Norbert will inhale, while no longer protected when under Severus' robes, or all the dangerous ingredients lying around. Evans seemed not being very efficient in cleaning, or didn't care when students half-heartedly cleaned up their mess. Therefore, the potion lab wasn't a good place for a dragon to sit or lay around. On the other hand, it was the perfect opportunity to see if Norbert will have any problems to stay out of school and with Hagrid. As already mentioned, Norbert will become too big for the school anyway, and should he not learn or be able to change his size on his own, then he must stay out of the school, because he won't just fit inside anymore. To their relief, Norbert quickly adjusted to this new development and had no qualms to stay with Hagrid for the short time of them being in potions class. Another surprise had been that someone decided to merge Hadrian's and Severus' bed to a triple-size bed, big enough for two preteens and a dragon the size of a young tiger. Since their return to Hogwarts, there wasn't a night they didn't share a bed. Of course, nothing happened, both far too young for doing more as to cuddle, not to forget the other boys sleeping in the room. And to be honest, Ron was the only one disgusted and protesting of this change, ignoring the fact that even Seamus and Dean sometimes shared a bed, even if most of the times it just happened because they talked till late into the night and fell asleep. Hadrian thought that there was more between the boys, though, but kept his assumptions for himself. In rare occasions, Neville joined Hadrian and Severus, sometimes still plagued by nightmares of the attack, almost losing his parents or his own life. Knowing Neville represented no competition to his claim and seeing him more as a brother in need of comfort, Hadrian had no issue to let him join them. Severus also had no qualms being squeezed between the two of them. Truly, Ron was the only one having a problem sharing a bed. Not that anyone felt the need to want to share a bed with him, even unintentionally, especially when it meant to sleep in the same bed with a rat like Scabbers. Something was wrong with this rat. But Hadrian still couldn't figure out why he felt so uneasy in the presence of Ron's familiar. And he wasn't the only one. Dante, Norbert, Hedwig, and all the other familiars behaved aggressive whenever Scabbers came to close. Over the next couple of months, Norbert grew even more until he was as big as a young horse shortly before reaching majority. The fact that he couldn't stay with Severus any longer, not even during the other classes, was devastating. Whereas it had been no problem for Norbert to be separated for a couple of hours 1 or 2 times per week, was it a complete other matter when it meant to stay away for several hours each day. Norbert's whines and shouts could be heard even in the dungeons, which were the farthest away from the outside. Some of the youngest were crying, others looked with pity to where the shouts were coming, among them even Ron, while others, mostly the Potters and a few students who disliked the dragon, were demanding that the dragon has to be removed when he wouldn't stop. Severus was forced to leave classes to calm Norbert down, but it always lasted just a max couple of hours before Norbert would start anew. So after a week, Severus started to minimize Norbert, which must have triggered something in the dragon, because only a couple of weeks later, Norbert sat on the bed, looking at them excitedly when they came back from the morning shower. Hadrian would never forget the proud smile on Severus' face when Norbert jumped in the air and flew the short distance directly in Severus' waiting arms. Severus and Hadrian praised Norbert for his accomplishment, and the dragon, having the size of a cat, puffed up in pride. At the end, they stayed with the routine that Norbert came within all classes except of potions. Not that he couldn't hide under Severus' robes again, but they wanted Norbert to learn to be on his own or with others. Therefore, continuing staying with Hagrid was a very good option and allowed the dragon to have contact with some other creatures. In reminding of other creatures, 6 weeks after the attack, and while playing with Norbert near Hagrid's hut, a healthy and beautiful unicorn emerged from the shadows of the forest, escorted by a centaur. Severus recognized Celeste immediately. With a smile, he approached the duo, slowly, while Hadrian stayed a little behind and observed the surroundings, seeing that Draco wasn't very far away, sitting with his own friends and watching. The Dark Elf felt still guilty about losing Severus in the Forbidden Forest, and was even more cautious not being distracted when a potential danger was close, and always having one eye on his protege. Celeste greeted Severus with a nudge and let him hug her. The meeting with the two creatures was short, though. Other students had noticed the rare creatures and came closer. The centaur exchanged a few words, promising they would meet again before retreating into the forest. Knowing that Celeste was fine eased something in Severus. He was very worried about the unicorn and often asked Hagrid if he heard something, who declined every time. Now, they all were looking forward to return home. It'd be just another month in which they will have and receive their exams, watching the last Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, which will decide who wins the Quidditch Cup, and end it all with a final celebration in the Great Hall after announcing which house won the House Cup. Little did they know that one final challenge awaited them, beginning with finding a stupefied Neville lying in the dormitory. Rescue mission and meeting the Dark Lord. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. I hope you all had a nice weekend. Have fun with a new chapter. It's time for the final challenge at the end of the first year. Finite Incantatem. Hadrian ended the stunning spell and helped Neville up while asking, "What happened?" Weasley. He was speaking about the Dark Lord wanting to steal something hidden in the castle. I told him it was bullshit, and even if not, that he'd inform Dumbledore or one of the other professors. He said Dumbledore isn't in the castle. Neither are the Potters. He didn't even go to McGonagall, saying there was no time to search for a professor. Hadrian scoffed. "Let me guess. You wanted to stop him, and he cast the stunning spell on you." "Yes. Besides, the idiot cost us enough points already. Not that it really matters, but you get my point." "Yeah." Weasley likes to prove what a true Gryffindor is, running head first instead of thinking of the consequences. Unfortunately, he managed to convince Hopkins and Dunbar, both wanting to become Aurors after school. TSK. Ron said it'd increase their chances if they would stop you-know-who. I can't say that I'm surprised. Both have similar views like Weasley. Still, I hadn't thought them being stupid. "Well, let us inform Professor McGonagall and be done with it," shrugged Hadrian. "Hadrian? Where is Norbert?" Severus looked at the spot Norbert was usually lying in while they were in the washroom. Hadrian, Severus. Both turned to the heavy, panting Hermione, having her hands on her knees. "Ron, I saw him with Hopkins and Dunbar. They had Norbert with them." "What?" Hadrian didn't scream. Instead, he growled in a low whisper. I was just coming back. I lost time when I was in the library. On my way back, I saw them. I followed them, but lost them on the moving stairs. They were heading to 3rd floor. I came back as fast as I could. Norbert was squirming in Ron's hold, clearly not liking to be there. Suddenly, the temperature sunk several degrees until they all could see their breath. Hadrian saw Neville, Seamus, and Dean retreating, at first thinking it was because of him, but then he noticed that they weren't looking at him, but at a spot next to him, where Severus stood. Hadrian turned and almost froze, not because of the cold he registered just now, but because of Severus' sudden change of appearance, or more that of his eyes. The white turned black, while the silver pupils were surrounded by a blue ring. "Neville, find McGonagall and tell her what happened." "W will do." "What about you?" "Severus and I will follow these idiots and bring Norbert back." "I'll come with you," declared Hermione. "Whatever you want." Seamus and I will stay here and inform the others." "Keep it to yourself what you just seen." No one else needs to know that Severus is more as a mere wizard. Sure, I mean it. Hadrian, who hadn't stopped staring at his mate until then, turned, showing the others his own golden eyes with slit emerald green pupils. The boys raised their hands and nodded several times in a quick pace. Let's go. Neville, Seamus, and Dean watched them leave, still shivering. I don't know if I'd feel sorry for Ron or pray for him to survive, said Seamus. HMPF. I wouldn't blame Severus or Hadrian if they kill him. I think it had been clear enough not to mess with them, or what they consider family. And Norbert, even if not human, is like a child to them. Ron should have known better. Neville is right. I, for myself, don't feel sorry. Warnings were given, and if Ron is stupid enough to ignore them, then he deserves what's coming. Yeah, well, maybe I'm just a little worried what will happen if they kill him. Nothing. Hadrian and Severus are under the protection of Lord Tempest. The Ministry won't risk a war with the oldest of creatures just because of one stupid boy. Right. I better go and search for McGonagall. Neville stormed off, while Seamus and Dean stayed behind. The coldness followed them the entire time. Severus' eyes hadn't changed yet, and Hadrian was glad that they haven't met anyone. Not that he was any better, but he didn't want people knowing that Severus was another creature, at least not now, when he practically radiated with such murderous aura. Ron made a huge mistake by taking Norbert. How he did manage it didn't matter. And even if Norbert went on his own free will, would it be no excuse? Norbert was their responsibility, and taking him without their consent can be considered as kidnapping. Not to forget that Ron didn't take Norbert to play with him, but to take him on a dangerous quest where he could get hurt again. No, there was absolutely no excuse, and the boy should pray not to get killed or sent to Azkaban, and instead just get marked like Potter. There was no way Alukard wouldn't do it. They reached the door which they had entered when hiding from Mrs. Norris and opened it. The three-headed dog was still there and wide awake. However, it submitted almost immediately when they entered. Hadrian could see the harp in the corner. Knowing music could put the dog to sleep, because of Hagrid's slip-up, Hadrian cast a quick spell to activate it. Not long after, Fluffy was asleep, and they moved to the open trapdoor, looking down. Devil's snare. I guess they had no idea how to pass it, and just burned it. Guess Hermione, TSA. They surely jumped right on it and then panicked when they realized what it was, which only triggers the plant to attack. The best way to handle Devil's Snare is to keep calm and not moving. It'll let go of you on its own then. The more you're moving, the more it'll tighten the hold around you. I know. It was Norbert. What? Hermione lifted her head to look at Severus. Norbert burnt the plant. Devil's Snare can't be simply burnt by normal fire. It needs sunlight, dragon fire, or fiend fire for it to burn like this. I see. Let us go. Who knows how far ahead they are? I want my baby back, hissed Severus. Hadrian shivered, not because he was fearing his mate. Far from it. No, it was the devotion and protectiveness behind the words, which let his inner dragon purr. Proud to have a mate which would protect their children fiercely. And to get a first glimpse of Severus' death angel nature was a bonus. Those eyes were breathtaking. However, his mate had a point. They needed to hurry. Therefore, Hadrian was the first to jump down, having no problem to jump from higher places, and then helped Hermione and Severus by casting a feather light charm and catching them. They followed a passage with stone walls until they reached a brilliantly lit chamber with a very high ceiling. Are those wing keys? Asked Hermione. Seems so. Hadrian was looking for another door and saw it on the opposite side of the room. It was an old-fashioned wooden door with a silver lock. Alohomora. Nothing happened, and Hadrian had the suspicion that they needed one of these wing keys to pass the door, which he shared with his companions. There, I think it's this old-looking key. Hermione pointed to a spot not very far from them. There is also a broom. Wait here. No need. Severus stopped Hadrian by taking his wrist. The temperature around them dropped even more, and not long after all keys fell from the sky, frozen. Hermione gaped, and even Hadrian was impressed. He didn't know Severus could manipulate the temperature. His mind went back when he met Dementor, the leader of the Dementors of Azkaban and Severus' adoptive parent. Didn't his father told the Dementor to control himself so that they wouldn't freeze to death? Does Severus have the same ability to influence the temperature around him? Hadrian shook his head. That was a question for later. He watched Severus fetching the old key and coming back to open the door. He was glad Hermione kept her questions for herself as well. He was surprised how calm she was, though. Even Neville had withdrawn, even if he knew what Severus was. But she didn't show any sign of discomfort, neither by finding out that Severus wasn't just a wizard, nor by the coldness around them, which was a little weird, especially after the temperature dropped to freezing temperatures. She didn't seem fazed by it, though, which was interesting. Another thought Hadrian would keep in mind. Next, they entered a huge chamber with a gigantic chessboard in it. There they found Hopkins lying on the ground, unconscious. They sprinted to the boy, checking him over. There was a gash on his forehead with a lot of blood covering his face. He needs a healer. Where are the others? Probably left him after the game was over. Hadrian inspected the figures and saw on one of them with dried blood on it. He could guess what the task was: to get on the other side of the chessboard. Which game? A game of wizarding chess, which you have to win if you want to reach the exit. Severus pointed to another opening behind what Hadrian considered the enemy of the game. Hermione, can you take care of Hopkins until a professor arrives? Sure. Okay. Let us move him off the board. Together they moved Hopkins close to the exit they had come from. Hermione stayed with him, while Hadrian and Severus turned to the board. No matter how stupid Weasley actually is, he knows how to play wizarding chess. Something I'm not very good in, to be honest. Severus considered the board for a few seconds before smiling. Don't worry, I won't sacrifice you. Hadrian laughed and then took place on one of the empty spots, while Severus took the other. The game was over within a minute, and both quickly made their way over to the other exit. Hermione called for them to be careful and wished them luck. Both nodded and then disappeared, entering another dark passage. It didn't take very long until a foul odor reached their noses and let them flinch. Troll. Yeah, I had hoped not to smell this ever again. Hadrian covered his nose, trying not to gag. The smell was even worse than it had been when the troll was roaming around the halls. Severus did the same, having tears forming in his eyes due to the nasty smell. A few seconds later, they heard a scream, followed by a deep growl, which didn't sound like Norbert. Both looked at each other before running to the end of the passage, just to see Dunbar flying in their direction, being hit by the club of the troll. She landed next to them, barely conscious. Hadrian pulled out his wand, ready to fight the troll, while Severus went down next to the girl. Where is Ron? The girl didn't answer at first, but after taking some painful breaths, stuttered. Gigon, you used me as this distraction. Thou thought he would attack the TR troll, but run instead. Co-coward. Just as the last word left her mouth, she went limp. Severus startled when the ground shook. He pulled out his wand as well, but when he turned, the troll was lying on the ground, still alive but unconscious. Hadrian walked back to them, kneeling on the girl's other side, and asked, "How is she?" "Alive but seriously injured. We can't take her with us, but leaving isn't an option either. I won't let you go alone." "But Norbert, he needs me. Who knows what Ron is using him for?" "I can't." "Sure, I know." The hate for the redhead grew even more. "I can stay with her." They startled when Draco suddenly appeared next to them. "Where are you coming from?" "TSK. One of the Slytherins saw you and came running, informing me. You can be lucky it was one who knows about my secret, and that Severus is my protege. Don't worry, they only know what I am, not what Severus' true nature is." Draco looked into the black eyes of Severus with the little blue and silver in the middle. "They didn't mention your eyes changed, so I guess they weren't close enough to notice." "My eyes changed." Severus blinked, staring at Draco in confusion. "You didn't notice? How would I?" "You have a point." "Severus, you know that you are a creature, right?" "Yes, of course. I just didn't know my eyes could change. It's normal for most creatures. Usually, they change color when you're very upset. Which reminds me of our current predicament. Leave. I'll take her to Hermione and come back as fast as I can." "Thank you. I know it must be difficult to leave your protege in such danger. Nothing we can do about. It wouldn't be easy for you either. At least I know he has you and is not completely alone. But you better go, right? Come on, Severus." Severus thanked Draco as well, and then they run to the direction they hoped Ron and Norbert would be, while the blonde heaved the girl into his arms and run back to where Hermione was waiting. They didn't stop running until they reached another chamber, which entrance, however, was blocked with purple flames. Behind the barrier, they could see a table with different kinds of potion bottles, standing right in the middle. The other exit was blocked by black flames, but what held their complete attention was the boy pacing around the table, while having a squirming Norbert in his arms whose mouth seemed to be gagged. At seeing that, Hadrian let out a deep growl, while Severus bared sharp teeth, which no one had noticed so far, possibly only coming out now when he sees his baby being distressed and abused. The coldness came back with a vengeance and slowly forced back the magical flames right in front of them. Ron didn't notice them until they were able to pass the purple flames and was greeted with a snarl. "You better let go of Norbert, or you'll lose your arms." "Ah, shit." Ron startled, but his grip around Norbert was still tight. "What are you doing here? Let go of him. I swear you're just a second away from being ripped apart." "Whoa, calm down, will you? Norbert came with me on his own free will." "Doesn't look like it. Why is he gagged? What gave you the right to take him?" "He's helping to stop Voldemort." Neither Ron nor Hadrian were prepared when a magical shock wave hit them. Ron lost his grip around Norbert, who promptly rolled in direction of the black flames and through them. As a dragon, he was immune to most magical flames. Hadrian just got back on his feet when he saw Severus jumping through the black flames as well, having them forced back enough to do so. But as soon as he was through the flames, came back and stopped Hadrian to follow his mate. He screamed in frustration and stormed over to Ron, who was still lying on the ground, his neck in a strange angle. He wasn't dead, though. Hadrian ignored him and went over to the table with the potions, sure that one of them would let him pass the flames. Severus ran down the stairs, having seen his baby falling. To his relief, Norbert didn't fall far, having stopped on the middle of the stairs. The dragon tried to remove the gag around his mouth in vain. Severus kneeled. "Norbert, come let me remove this." As soon as he was free, Norbert jumped in his mother's arms and nuzzled into his neck. "Sure, I'm here." Norbert scratched Severus' robe, wanting to hide under them. Severus let him. He opened his robe and closed them around Norbert, who wrapped his tail around Severus' waist. Severus stood slowly, having his arms around Norbert to keep him in place. Something got Severus' attention when he was looking around, deciding what to do next. At the end of the stairs was another big chamber, and he could see a person standing in front of a big mirror. Before he could take a step back, a voice sounded through the air. "Come here, boy." Severus flinched, his scar on the back starting to pain. Still, he went the rest of the stairs down and stopped a few feet behind the person, who he recognized as Quirrell, when the professor turned and removed the hood of his robe. "Mr. Prince, I didn't expect you." Severus didn't say anything, unsure why the professor was here. The usual stutter was also gone. Then he remembered Neville mentioning that Ron wanted to stop the Dark Lord. "Are you the Dark Lord?" "Me? Don't be ridiculous. I fear I can't let you leave, though." "Wait." Severus stiffened. There was another voice, but it wasn't Quirrell's. Severus looked around, but didn't see anyone else. His bad feeling increased. "Let me talk to him." "My lord." Severus' eyes widened. "Do it." Quirrell obeyed and begun to unwrap his turban. When he was done, he turned, and Severus watched in astonishment when a face appeared on the back of the man's head. However, the pain on his back increased tenfold, and Severus began to shiver, tightening his hold around Norbert, who whimpered. "Severus Sephiroth, Prince. A very interesting name. I knew a Severus. Severus Snape was his name. One of my followers who betrayed me, and is the reason why I'm living as a wraith for almost 11 years. I don't know a Severus Snape. It was a half-lie." Severus didn't know who this Snape was, but heard some stories about the man. "Maybe not. Still, I'm curious why I can feel my magic around you. It let me wonder since your arrival in the Great Hall at the beginning of the school year." Severus shrugged. He was aware of the dark magic within him, but not that it was linked to the Dark Lord, not until now at least. Doesn't matter now anyway. Come over here and look into the mirror. Tell me what you see." Severus did, not removing his eyes from Quirrell Voldemort until he stood in front of the mirror. At first, he didn't see anything, just his own reflection. He relaxed a little when he saw his usually silver eyes surrounding black pupils. His hair was a little messy, but nothing what couldn't be fixed with a comb. Then a man appeared behind his reflection. It wasn't Quirrell, because he was standing next to Severus, closely watching him. Severus knew there was no other person with them, though. which meant it must be kind of an illusion. He wondered who the man was. Somehow he felt familiar. The man had black hair, just reaching his shoulders. His skin was pale, making him look sickly. However, it was those black eyes what triggered something in Severus. A man standing over crib, looking down at a baby with golden eyes. Before he screamed in pain when a spell hit the shield he cast to protect the baby. The same man Severus was seeing in the mirror, looking at him with so much sadness that Severus had to fight against tears. Then there was another memory. The same man lying in a dark cell, dying. A Dementor, his father, being in the same cell floating above the man. Severus didn't understand until he saw the man changing, turning to a baby with silver blue hair. Severus stared at the man in the mirror in shock. Was that him? The man nodded, answering his internal question. The words of the Dark Lord came back to his mind. Severus Snape. That had been his name. He was a Death Eater. Does it mean he is a monster? The man in the mirror shook his head. He kneeled next to his reflection and pointed at first at himself, then at Severus again and again. It took a few seconds for Severus to understand. He wasn't that man. He wasn't Severus Snape. Not anymore. At that moment a woman appeared behind the two, smiling. The older Severus stood, and she wrapped her arms around him, giving him a kiss. Then she did the same with his reflection. Severus felt the warmth where she was holding him, the love coming from her. When she stroked over the back of his reflection, he could feel the pain subsiding. He almost sighed in relief. She gave him another smile, and then he saw her pulling out a red stone. He watched her hand sliding under his robe, and just a moment later, there was a weight appearing in one of his pockets. Severus didn't move, knowing whatever she put there wasn't meant to land in the hand of the man standing beside him. She gave another smile before standing and taking the hand of his other self. Then they vanished. Tell me what you see. Severus startled at the sudden hissing. However, before he could reply, Hadrian came running down the stairs, putting himself between Severus and the other man, wand at ready. Mr. Potter, I'd have guessed that Mr. Prince wouldn't be alone. You two are inseparable. It's Peveril. I'm not a Potter. Please apologize. I forgot for a second that you were adopted after I tried to kill you. Tell me, how does it feel to have been abandoned by those claiming to love you? Best thing what could ever have happened to me. The Potters never loved me. I see. Maybe you should thank me then to have invaded your home. TSK. Even if you haven't had come, they would have still sent me away. After all, shortly before you arrived, my own mother tried to kill me, which had woken up my creature inheritance. Funny thing, they might even have killed me themselves if you wouldn't have attacked. I'm just a lucky guy, I think. Hadrian smiled smugly at the Dark Lord. I see. Too bad they haven't managed. Maybe then one of my own wouldn't have betrayed me. Would have been interesting to see Snape reacting when finding out that the woman he loved so much killed her own child. Well, we never will find out. At least, he'll be remembered as the one rescuing a baby, whom the Dark Lord was afraid of. A baby, truly. Only a coward would attack a toddler. Voldemort snarled. You're not a toddler anymore, are you? So maybe I'd use the opportunity and get rid of you and your little friend. I don't think so. Voldemort and Quirrell screamed in unison when a spell coming from nowhere hit them. Hadrian and Severus watched how they began turning to ash before looking at the direction the spell had been coming from. Father, I'm so glad that this year is almost over. I can't believe to find you in trouble again. Alukard walked down the stairs, followed by Professor McGonagall and Professor Flitwick. It wasn't our fault. Weasley kidnapped Norbert. And well, let us say, instinct took over. Hadrian gave his father a meaningful glare, without looking at his mate. Still, Alukard understood the message and didn't push the matter further. How are the others? Asked Severus nervously. Miss Granger and Mr. Malfoy are fine. Mr. Hopkins and Ms. Dunbar have some broken bones and a concussion. They will be out of the infirmary within a few days, though. However, Mr. Weasley might need a while longer to recover. His neck is broken. He's lucky to have survived it, but it will take at least the summer holidays until he's fully recovered, answered McGonagall. Severus didn't say anything. He knew it was him who caused it, but he couldn't feel sorry about it. Weasley kidnapped Norbert, his baby, and endangered him. Where is Norbert? Asked Alukard when the silence begun to feel uncomfortable. He's here. Severus opened his robe, and they all could see the dragon clinging to Severus' chest while the tail was around his waist. I wonder how Mr. Weasley could take him. Why didn't he change into his bigger form? Asked Flitwick. Alucard kneeled and took a closer look at the dragon. Norbert has exhausted his magical core. It works like with all magical beings. If you use too much magic at once, you'll need time to regain your strength. HMHM. Norbert needs a little while before he can change his size again, nodded Severus, stroking Norbert's head. And he's still very young. His magical core is still developing, added Alucard. Poor thing. That must have been a traumatic experience. Yeah. Hopefully he will recover quickly, or it'll take at least another year until he's ready to be away from us, especially Severus, said Hadrian. We have the entire summer to help him to recover from this ordeal. I'm sure he'll be fine by start of the next term. Alucard noticed that Severus wasn't completely with them anymore and tapped him on the shoulder. Severus? Are you fine? Yes. It's just Quirrell, who wanted me to look into the mirror over there, and I saw a man. It was me, but not me. And then there was a woman putting something into my pocket. In that of my reflection, but I could feel it. Severus had spoken so low that Alucard was sure neither of the others heard what he said. Alucard, on the other hand, heard and understood every word. He leaned a little forward, whispering, I know it must be confusing, but you're no longer that man. Not completely. Lady Magic, I'm sure it was the woman you have seen, gave you a second chance in life. She gave you a new family, a new name, even if your first name remains the same. But she saw something in you which deserved more as the life prior could give. What do you mean? Not completely. Well, you still have your brilliant mind, don't you? Severus still looked unsure. Severus, please don't worry for now. I promise we talk about it later, when you and Hadrian are back at home, where no one can hear what we discuss. Okay. Severus nodded. Oh, and keep what Lady Magic gave you. But it's not mine. It is now. Lady Magic wouldn't have shown up otherwise. And I warned the old fool to remove it from Hogwarts. It's his own fault if hadn't listened. Alucard grinned and ruffled Severus' hair before standing up again. Let us move out of here. I want you both checked over before I leave again. It was just when they took their first step on the staircase that Professor McGonagall yelled a warning. They turned and saw something manifesting above Quirrell's ashes. It was the Dark Lord in his wraith form. He screamed and then flew in an incredible speed in direction of Severus. However, Alucard was faster and forced the wraith form to change direction. Then Voldemort was gone. I guess that means we haven't seen the last of him, muttered Hadrian, having an arm around Severus. TSK. It'll take him a while to come back. Until then, we'll enjoy the peace and concentrate on the here and now. And even if he returns, then we will be prepared. But that's nothing you have to worry about. Enjoy your years of being children. Adulthood comes soon enough. Severus snickered. Sure. And with that they left the underground chambers, glad that neither of them got seriously injured, while Norbert was glad to be back with his mother. You are not alone. Chapter notes. Edit by Trickster32. Hey guys, have fun with the new chapter. See the end of the chapter for more notes. Alucard took Severus and Hadrian to the infirmary. They looked unharmed, but he wanted to be sure. He was also worried what Severus learned about his former life. He had hoped the boy could live a little longer without the realization of who he had been. On the other hand, maybe it wasn't so bad as he feared. So far, he didn't show any sign of distress or anxiety, and he didn't withdraw from Hadrian either. Maybe Alucard's worry is indeed misplaced, underestimating the person Severus was and is. In addition, Lady Magic herself had been there. He was sure it was her. She wouldn't have allowed Severus to see his former self when she would have been worried it could hurt or harm him in any way. She usually doesn't interfere in what her children are doing, not personally, but she could if wanted like this time. Regardless of her reasons, Alucard will talk to Severus a few days after they return home and see what exactly happened. One step after another, as Muggles like to say. Elizabeth was already waiting for them when they entered the infirmary. Alucard had taken her with him when the fire message from Professor McGonagall reached him. It was a good decision to bring her along. The Medi-Witch of Hogwarts had her hands full with the other children, who had foolishly thought it being a good idea to go after a possible dark wizard. All three of them were lucky to be still alive, especially the redhead, with Weasel or something his name. When Elizabeth saw them, she waved them over to one of the beds on the far end and closed the curtains to give them some privacy. With whom should I start? Elizabeth looked them over, like Alukard not seeing any harm at them. Can you please take a look at Norbert? Asked Severus shyly. Of course, my dear. Due to Hadrian's nature, I studied dragons the last 10 years, and even if I wouldn't call myself an expert, I can at least examine him. Would you please lay him down on the bed? They watched Severus opening his robe, revealing a very clingy and exhausted-looking Norbert. When Severus tried to remove Norbert, the dragon tightened the hold he had with his tail around Severus' waist even more and pressed his claws further into the tunic, which caused Severus to flinch when he felt the claws digging into his flesh. Instead of getting upset, Severus stopped his efforts and stroked Norbert's head and back. I'm sorry, but can you examine him like this? Norbert wouldn't let go of me. Understandable. Would you please sit down on the bed? Let me help you. Alukard lifted Severus in the air and put him on the bed so that he was sitting on the edge, even before the boy could protest. Let us see. First, Elizabeth let her gaze wander over the dragon's body. Here, and they're probing into the rough skin. Norbert let out small hissings and growls, but didn't do anything more, encouraged by his adopted parent to stay calm and promise that no harm will be done to him. At last, Elizabeth pulled out her wand, performing some magical scans, reading over the parchment with the results, and ending with some slight healing spells. The little one is fine, except for a few minor scratches and a low level of magic. No broken bones, no damage on his wings. His magic should be back to normal after a long resting sleep, as usual. I only doubt he will transform into his usual size anytime soon. Not with how he clings to you and after such traumatic experience. Will it harm him to be not in his actual form for so long? No. Changing his size is part of his nature and won't have any influence of his development. And he knows changing back would mean that he couldn't stay with you. Not like this. I see. Don't worry. Just another week and you will return home with us. We will help you and Norbert to recover from this ordeal, and he will be his happy self soon after. But for now, let me check you over. Anything that hurts? No. My back had hurt when I came close to Professor Quirrell, but the woman, Lady Magic, did something to soothe it. It doesn't hurt anymore. The two adults and Hadrian looked worried, though. Let me take a look anyway, okay? Severus nodded. Elizabeth and Alukard walked behind Severus and carefully lifted his tunic. The scars shimmered in an angry red. It must have been very painful to be close to the Dark Lord. Hadrian hissed after leaning back and even let out a small whine. Again, he couldn't protect his mate. Worst, he let it happen that Weasley kidnapped Norbert and therefore forced them to run into a dangerous situation. It's okay, Hadrian. It wasn't your fault. Hadrian turned to Severus, who looked at him with understanding eyes. How can you say that? How can you not blame me for what happened? It's my duty to protect you and Norbert, our family. I'm a failure. I wouldn't even blame you not to trust me with any future children we might have, not to mention ending the courtship and search for someone more capable. Severus turned bright red of the mention of future children, but quickly pushed the thought aside. Instead, he put his hand on Hadrian's cheek to stop his rambling. Look at me, Hadrian. The dragon shifter hesitated, not wanting to see the disappointment in his mate's eyes. When he felt the light touch on his skin, he almost flinched away. However, the hand on his cheek didn't withdraw, and the feeling of the touch was very soothing. So Hadrian leaned further into it and slowly turned his head to meet his mate's eyes. Hadrian tried not to start crying at the sign. There was no disappointment or any other negative feeling he expected to be there. Instead, Severus was smiling, even if it was barely there, and his beautiful eyes held so much fondness inside them. Today I saw a man. I saw some of his memories as well. He wasn't a very nice person, was part of a group of bad people. However, I saw how he saved a child as well and sacrificed himself. There was so much regret and sadness in his features. I saw the man dying and be reborn in a cell in Azkaban. Severus? Hadrian perked up. You know him. I was that man. I was the reason the Dark Lord attacked you and your family. I don't know his entire history, my history. I only saw some glimpses. But knowing that I was part of this group, a group of murderers, torturers, you are not him, not anymore. I know. I was reborn. Still, How can you be sure that I won't become this person again? Maybe something even worse. Impossible. And your former self wasn't like the others. He deeply regretted his choice. You saw it. If he hadn't then, he wouldn't have come to save me. Perhaps. And I know I'm not him. For a short moment, I feared it. But he made clear I wasn't him anymore. Lady Magic herself saw something in him. In me, to give me that chance of a second life, but it doesn't change the past. We might not be the same person, but he's still a part of me. And you know it. You know what he did. And here you are still asking me to be your mate, the mother of your children. Why? Because you are my mate. Severus shook his head at the answer. This wasn't it, and both knew it. Your instincts might tell you that I'm your mate. But would you trust your mate to protect your children, knowing that he or she can't even protect themselves and is just a puppet for another? You're not a puppet. You never were a puppet. The circumstances forced you to make difficult decisions, to make mistakes you might not have done when others hadn't looked away. Circumstances like a student kidnapping my child and forcing you to make a difficult decision. Forcing me into danger? Hadrian opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. They had gotten off topic, but were now back at the actual problem. Hadrian's own doubts. Severus continued, not waiting for Hadrian's mind to spiral back in self-doubt. Hadrian, I know you want to protect me, and I have no doubts that you will try. But as you said yourself months ago, you can't protect me from everything, and I don't expect that from you, because I know it's impossible. Neither am I expecting you to be my perfect mate. We both will make mistakes, we both will be unable to protect each other, and as much I hated to say, but we won't be able to always protect our children. We can just try. Determination filled Severus' eyes. And to make myself clear, I'll rip anyone apart who will try to hurt my babies, our babies. Neither will I allow you to leave me behind. I won't sit in a gilded cage and watch you leave, waiting if you or my children may come back, just because you fear not be able to protect me. I won't. I promise you I won't lock you up, as much as my dragon might want to. Whatever might happen in the future, we will do it together, or I will trust in your own abilities to do what is needed should I not be there to help you. Hadrian leaned forward. You showed me today that I can count on you. You were brave and fierce, determined. You didn't hesitate to knock Weasley out. I almost killed him, whispered Severus, feeling ashamed suddenly. He's just a child. That is no excuse. There were several warnings to not mess with you. That boy ignored all of it and kidnapped Norbert. He might be a dragon, and many might think he's just a pet, but they are wrong. Even if you're a child yourself right now, your instincts accepted him as your child. Nothing is wrong with that. I know a lot of Wixen and creatures who see their own familiars as siblings or their children and will do anything to protect them, intervened Alukard. The vampire had put up a privacy bubble as soon as Severus talked the first time to Hadrian, having noticed the other boy's trouble. And from what he heard so far, his own worries were unwarranted. Severus already accepted his past self, even if not remembering everything from his past. Maybe never will. I know even some peoples who love their pets more than their own children, snickered Elizabeth, causing the two boys to giggle as well. Yeah, now that you mention it, I'd almost swear Ron is in love with his rat. Now they all were laughing before turning serious again. Alucard walked around the bed, kneeling in front of the two boys and looking each of them in the eyes. You both won't be alone. You have friends and family who also will help you whenever you are in need, like today. Never hesitate to call us or sending someone to do just that. As both of you have said, neither can promise that no harm will come to you. May it be due to an accident or not, but never think you have to do something on your own. Think before you are running in any situations, and more importantly, try not to run in anything on your own. Even a harmless situation can turn to the most dangerous. Alucard turned to Severus. I know you don't want to be locked up or live in a gilded cage, and neither of us will do that to you. But Severus, it might have not occurred to you yet, but you are very important for the surviving of the magical world. I hope we would have some years before telling you this, but with what happened today, you need to be aware of that. The vampire took Severus' hand between his own. Please, let this not stop you from being a child. You have still 5 more years to enjoy your second chance of being just this. Your past self missed that chance, so don't let it be a waste. Play and have fun with your newfound friends. And as much as I like to hear both of you talking already of future children, take it slowly. As long as you are students, I don't want to hear the word pregnant from you. Am I clear? Both boys were bright red now and nodded in a fast pace. Very good. Alucard stood up. Severus, your scar is red but doesn't show any sign of inflammation. Unfortunately, you might feel it more in the next few days until the dark magic in it calmed down again. The salve I gave you had done a good job to keep it in check, but with the Dark Lord's reveal and release of his magic, it couldn't stop the influence of the magic in your back. Why didn't Lady Magic remove it? Asked Hadrian. Not that I'm not thankful that she took the pain, but still, as I told you, even Lady Magic's influence of the world is limited, and removing dark magic can have serious consequences. Would it be so easy? She would have done so much earlier. Hadrian nodded in acceptance, even if not happy about the answer. Okay, I'm done with Severus. Hadrian, you're next. Elizabeth walked next to Alucard, so she was face to face with her last patient. The examination was quick. The test was not revealing any injuries. Alucard helped Severus back on his feet, and Hadrian put back the robe around his mate's shoulder. When they removed the curtain, they were met with the headmaster, who jolted a little back. Headmaster Dumbledore, I hadn't thought to meet you today. I heard you were on an important meeting in the ministry and won't come back until tomorrow. Alucard ignored the attempt of spying on them, knowing the headmaster wasn't strong enough to breach his privacy bubble. Lord Tempest, well, I heard about the incident and returned as soon as possible. I'm very sorry that so many students have been hurt. I'm sure you are. The headmaster turned to the two boys. Mr. Peverell, Mr. Snape, I fear I need to talk to you before letting you go back to your house. I'm sure whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. They need their rest, especially Norbert and Severus. Of course, but it's very important that they answer my question. Fine, ask your question. I don't think this is the correct place, and I wouldn't want to keep you. I'm sure you have other duties to take care of. No, not really. And I don't see why you can't ask your question here. Everyone in here knows what happened. Dumbledore squirmed, contemplating if he should ask right away or wait until the vampire left. But knowing that Harry will not keep the conversation a secret, he settled on the former. Well, I must ask if you found anything else in the chambers besides the fact that Quirrell was possessed by Voldemort. No, sir, answered Hadrian, while Severus shook his head. Are you sure? It's really important. I think I remember telling you whatever you were hiding in the castle should be removed and turned back to the owner. Are you telling me that you kept it? What? No. It's just there was something else, which has nothing to do with Harry Potter at all. Unfortunately, it let me drift away from my current stories a little too much. I try to do better, but I can't promise anything, except that no story of mine already posted will be abandoned before it's finished. Alucard gave Dante a slight nod before turning his gaze to the window, watching the passing landscape in silence until Hadrian returned from his little trip alone. 2 hours had passed when Severus and Juno woke from their slumber. Then another hour passed before Juno needed to be pee again. The whole time Norbert and Aurora stayed at their comfortable place, either sleeping or just watching what the others were doing. Dante got a little more active and crawled through Severus' hair, here and there stretching his wings. The four humans, or human-like creatures, played a few games while Hadrian told them that he had met Neville, Ron, and Hermione, who shared a compartment with an adult, whose face Hadrian couldn't see. The man had been asleep and covered by a blanket when Hadrian arrived and hadn't woken up the entire time of 30 minutes Hadrian had stayed. What was far more interesting, however, was the fact that Ronald Weasley had been there. The boy even apologized of what happened with Lockhart, that he hadn't intended to get anyone hurt. He just wanted to save his sister, Ginny, who sat with her own friend somewhere else in the train. Shortly after Alucard returned with Juna, a sudden jolt run through train, and it stopped in the next moment in the middle of a bridge. Severus, at first, afraid of what was happening, turned very excited when he noticed the dark shapes outside the frozen window coming closer and closer. Alucard sighed. I don't know if I'd be happy or frustrated about the ministry's decision. Severus titled his head, but didn't look at him, still trying to see where his papa was. I guess both would be accurate. Happy about sending Dementors after Sirius Black, and frustrated about how incompetent they are in needing them for finding one man. Hadrian shrugged. Well, as much as I respect Dementor as a friend, he can be very frightening. And currently, there are hundreds of children that actually are. You three stay here. I'll see if I can find Dementor. Maybe he has some news about Sirius. They wouldn't be here without a reason. Otherwise, Alucard watched Severus for a few seconds and shook his head in amusement. The boy was waving and jumping in excitement, and probably the only kid not frightened at the view of Dementors flying around the train. Hadrian and Juna, who had weaseled her way into her brother's lap and under his warm robe, were both watching Severus for several minutes until a noise let them turn to their compartment door. The complete train had been silent since Alucard left, and it made the sound even more noticeable. Something was coming, and by Severus' reaction, who whirled around and almost stumbled over his own feet in his excitement. It was probably his father. It was truly funny. The entire train was in a state of shock, and here was Severus, a usually very quiet and shy boy, opening the door with a wide grin and sparkling eyes and ready to jump into a Dementor's embrace. It was absolutely fascinating, if you ask Hadrian. Dementor was quick to catch his son and to enter the compartment, mindful that no prying eyes would see them. "Little angel, careful, missed you," Severus mumbled into the dark robe on which he holds tightly. "Don't fear. We will protect. Nothing happens to you." "So, he's free? They haven't lied?" Severus' grip tightened. "Yes, but how?" "Later. Need to go." Dementor carefully placed Severus on the seat. "Not alone you will be. We are there until Black is found, dead or alive." A shiver run down Hadrian's spine. He was absolutely sure that the Dementors won't hesitate to kill anyone that might threat Severus. Dementor retreated just when Alucard arrived. "My friend, I assume we will see you at Hogwarts." "Indeed. Expecto Patronum." Alucard whirled around, but it was already too late. Dementor let out a painful cry before vanishing at maximum speed. Severus, who had seen his father being attacked, screamed and jumped from his seat. Alucard caught the distressed boy before he'd run after Dementor and held him closely against his chest. With a thunderous expression, he stared at the one who he knew was a werewolf and the new Dada professor. "Lupin, you shouldn't have done that. They were just leaving." What? Lupin couldn't comprehend what he was seeing, and it caused Alucard to scoff. "Idiot." He went back into their compartment and closed the door, fearing he might do something that wouldn't be helpful in the moment. He was quick to open the window, knowing that Severus needed to see his father to calm down. "Dementor, fine. Shoo, little angel." Dementor appeared in front of Alucard and took Severus from him. "Are you sure you are fine?" "Yes. Not hurt." Alucard sighed in relief. The Patronus couldn't kill a Dementor, but it doesn't mean it couldn't be painful. "You better go. I'll meet with you later. We have a few things to discuss." Dementor nodded and handed Severus back to Alucard. "Not worry, little one. Annoying spell, but nothing that we can't handle." Dementor gave Severus a last pet on his head before he took off with the others. "Dad, Hadrian, I fear this year will as much be annoying as the last two." "I already guessed. Is Severus okay?" With worry, Hadrian observed Severus, who was staring mutely out of the window. "He will be. Just give him a few moments to recollect himself." Hadrian nodded and didn't take his eyes off Severus, who was slowly falling asleep. Later, during the welcoming feast, Dumbledore announced that the Dementors were there in help of finding Sirius Black, and that students didn't need to worry as long as they stayed within the Hogwarts walls. Not even 1 week into the new school year, and the halls were filled with voices. "Have you seen Professor Lupin's face? Have you seen Severus with the Griffin? Awesome. Can't believe Dementors are so close. Will we still be able to visit Hogsmeade? I hope they don't cancel Quidditch." And much more. It all begun on Monday, the first day of classes. As always, Severus was allowed to skip potion that was still taught by Professor Evans. Unfortunately, Hadrian was still forced to participate, but he mostly ignored the stares the professor was giving him. He was glad that neither of the Potters ever tried to speak with him since their failure attempts in first year. They kept mostly to themselves and just watched. The first time it got interesting was the second class on Monday, Dada. When Hadrian and Severus went into the classroom, Lupin watched them closely. Nothing happened within the first minutes of class, but then Lupin started to explain what Dementors were and how dangerous they are. With every word that left his mouth, the atmosphere in the classroom became chillier. And it was only when Lupin noticed the intense stare of Severus that the man paled and stopped. Mr. Prince? Is something wrong, Mr. Prince?" "Excuse me, Professor? I think he doesn't like the topic. Maybe we can skip it." At this point, Hermione had intervened, much to Hadrian's own relief. He was close to say something, but wasn't sure if he'd control his temper. Not even one day has passed, and he was already pissed. He hated when Severus was upset. With a confused frown, Lupin agreed and started to explain what a boggart was. Unfortunately, when class was over, Lupin called Hadrian, or more Harry, and asked him to stay behind for a moment. Hadrian just turned, looked him into the eyes, and said, "Firstly, my name is Hadrian, not Harry. Secondly, I think it's improper to call a student by their first name without permission. And thirdly, if you want to speak about the Potters, then I'm not interested." "Is that all?" It's Mr. Peveril, Professor Lupin." The man opened and closed his mouth, stunned. It took him quite a minute to find his voice again before he started again. "Mr. Peveril, my apology. I didn't mean any offense. If you haven't, then you'd have informed yourself better. But fine. Is there anything else I can help you with? I hate to let my boyfriend wait." "Boy what?" "Professor Lupin. I know what you are. Therefore, I'm very sure you'd already know what I am." "What do you mean?" With an incredulous look, Hadrian stared at the professor before he shook his head. Making sure they were alone, Hadrian said, "Where have you been for the last 13 years? Everyone knows that I am a creature, and since at least 2 years by now that I am a dragon. Therefore, I know what you are, and your wolf should know what I am, what my father is." "Your father, Professor Tempest." Ah yes. He's a vampire. Not just a vampire, a living one. You should know the difference." Lupin shifted awkwardly. Then he started a new attempt. "Mr. Peveril, if you're interested, I'd like to teach you the patron." "No, this won't be necessary." "No, but wouldn't you want to protect your boyfriend?" Hadrian snickered. "Professor Lupin, thanks for the offer, but no thanks. There is no need. If that's all, sure, Mr. Peveril." Hadrian turned to leave, but then cast a last glance over his shoulder. "Professor Lupin, maybe some advice. You'd start learning to listen to your wolf. It might help you to see things more clearly." With that, he left and joined his friends that were waiting outside. The next day started with the class care of magical creatures, a class both Hadrian and Severus had chosen as an elective class. It was also the first year that Hagrid took over as professor. After having been declared innocent, Hagrid was very quick to get his OWLs and newts. And even if he wasn't a master, yet it was decided he was good enough to replace Mr. Kettleburn, who decided it was time to retire before he was losing the rest of his limbs. The first thing Hagrid decided to do was to lead the class outside the castle to an area meant for introducing different kinds of creatures. They ventured into a big clearing that was surrounded by stone walls, separating the area from the rest of the forest. Inside, Hagrid ordered the students to wait behind some big rocks, which Hadrian assumed served as some kind of barrier. Not a very effective one, mind you, but probably still better than nothing. Hagrid excused himself and came back a few minutes later with a creature that Hadrian saw once in a book. "Isn't he beautiful?" Hagrid began to speak, and then threw what looked like a rat into the air, which was then snatched and eaten by the creature. While it was swallowing its prey, Hagrid added, "Say hello to Buckbeak." Hadrian didn't need to turn around, because he'd hear several students swallowing. It was Ron, who then asked, "Hagrid, exactly what is that?" "That, Mr. Weasley, is a hippogriff." Firstly, what you want to know about hippogriffs is that they're very proud creatures, very easily offended. You do not want to insult a hippogriff. It may be the last thing you will ever do, Hagrid explained, tone and expression serious before he happily clapped while turning and asked, "Now, who's like to come and say hello?" When Hagrid turned back, he was happy to see one student willing to participate. "Well done, Hadrian, well done." With a frown, Hadrian turned and saw all students several feet away from him. Severus waved at him, while Draco, Neville, and Hermione gave him a thumbs up. Hadrian rolled his eyes and slowly approached the hippogriff. Meanwhile, Hagrid explained, "You have to let him make the first move. It's only polite. So, step up, give him a nice bow. Then you wait and see if he bows back. If he does, you can go and touch him. If not, well, we'll get to that later." Hadrian stopped in his approach and asked, "Seriously? Don't be shy. I'm sure he'll like you. Just remember to give him your best bow, and everything will be fine." Hadrian, knowing he had no other choice, took a deep breath and then bowed deeply. It was only then that the hippogriff noticed his presence. At first, he snapped at him, and Hagrid ordered him to back off. Hadrian retreated a little and cursed himself when he stepped on a twig, but kept his head low. He was relieved to see that the hippogriff hadn't followed his movements. In the meanwhile, Hagrid kept telling him to keep still. After another 10 seconds, the hippogriff seemed to deem Hadrian worthy and bowed back. "Oh, well done, Hadrian. Well done." Hagrid praised and then threw another rat to the hippogriff, rewarding him as well. "Here, you big brute." A sigh of relief left Hadrian's mouth after straightening his back. But as it seemed it wasn't over yet. "I think you can go over and pat him now." "You think? Go on. Don't be shy." "Yeah, sometimes I hate my life," Hadrian muttered, but continued his way forward, nice and slow, like Hagrid repeated again and again. While Hadrian got closer and closer to the hippogriff, the others watched nervously. Hermione twitched as the creature snapped at Hadrian, because he moved too fast and grabbed Draco's hand accidentally. Surprised, Draco looked at her, and she let go immediately when she noticed what she had done, both looking at Hadrian's direction with slightly red faces. It was probably another minute until Hadrian was finally able to pet Buckbeak. Hagrid applauded, and the others followed his example. Thinking, now it was finally over, Hagrid surprised Hadrian when he said, "I think he may let you ride him now." Hadrian had just enough time to utter a "what?" when Hagrid picked him up. He tried to protest, but Hagrid just ignored him and sat him on the hippogriff's back. "Don't pull out any of his feathers, because he won't thank you for that." With that, Hagrid clapped Buckbeak on his behind, and Hadrian could only wrap his arms around the hippogriff's neck when it started to run. Seconds later, they were in the year. "Damn, Hagrid!" Hadrian screamed. The others watched how the hippogriff disappeared with Hadrian. It was maybe a minute later when they heard a happy scream from Hadrian. "Why am I not surprised?" Draco muttered with an eye roll, while Severus searched nervously the air for his boyfriend. "Don't worry, Sev. From his sounds, he seems to have a lot of fun." After what felt like hours, they saw the hippogriff heading back into their direction. When they landed, Hagrid praised Hadrian as well as Buckbeak while they came to a stop, and then helped the former back to the ground. The class applauded and stepped a little closer to greet Hadrian back into their mid, though they were quick to step back again when Hagrid asked for another volunteer. Someone in the group pushed Severus hard, so that he was stumbling several feet forward and almost fell. But a fluffy head stopped his fall before his knees could hit the ground. The moment the group noticed what happened, it went very silent in the clearing. Severus, who had closed his eyes, opened them slowly and stared right into an orange eye. "Severus, don't move," Hagrid whispered. Severus didn't hear Hagrid and moved an arm to place a hand on the hippogriff's head, who then pushed further into the touch and into the boy. And before everyone knew it, Buckbeak lowered himself to the ground as far as he could, so that he wasn't hovering over Severus. "What?" Not able to comprehend what he was seeing, Hagrid could just stare like the others. To his shock, Buckbeak took a very threatening stance as the half-giant approached, one of his front legs directly in front of Severus, who could barely see past it. Hagrid, I think it's better you stay away," Severus said. "Yeah, I think so too. Can you try to come over?" Severus took a step to the side, but Buckbeak was quick to follow his move, never removing his eyes from Hagrid. I'm sorry, but it seems he won't let me." "Fascinating. I never saw him behaving like this." Hagrid titled his head in wonderment, completely forgetting that they had still an audience. Hadrian, wait. Their attention was drawn to the students, where Hermione had reached out with a hand to stop a very pissed Hadrian. "Hadrian, you, Professor, would you please send everyone away? I think Buckbeak won't leave Severus as long as there are so many people around. And if possible, inform my father, Professor Tempest, just in case. But I can't just leave you. You don't need to worry." "If you're sure?" "I'm very sure." "Okay. Come on, guys. Let us—" "Oh, and Hagrid, you better punish Mr. Mackay, or better yet see him expelled for trying to kill a student." The crowd gasped loudly and turned to said boy, whose blood left his face. "It was an accident." Save your pathetic excuse for someone who wants to hear it. I'm not in the mood." With golden shining eyes, Hadrian snapped at the student in fury, who turned even paler than it'd be possible. Okay. Everyone calm down. It's not wise to get upset with a hippogriff so close. Hadrian, I trust that you know what you're doing. If something happens, you're not to blame, Hagrid. Well, maybe for the choice of introducing us to a hippogriff, but I guess it's a risk someone must take when choosing this class as an elective. Well, I guess. Awkwardly, Hagrid rubbed his head while letting out a nervous laugh. Then he got himself in order and shooed the students in direction of Hogwarts, leaving only Hadrian and Draco, who skipped Hagrid's notice, behind. Well, and Severus, who was still hidden behind Buckbeak. When the group was out of sight, Draco asked, "What now? How we start with your own introduction?" "Don't be dumb, Draco. It doesn't suit you." Fine. Nervously, Draco took 2 steps forward and then, like Hadrian had done, bowed deeply and kept eye contact with the hippogriff. In a threatening manner, Buckbeak spread his wings and got on his hind legs, forcing Draco to take a few steps back, though he stayed as calm as possible and didn't remove his eyes. Behind Draco, Hadrian bowed as well, hoping that Buckbeak would understand that they are no threat. And it seemed to work, even if the hippogriff didn't bow back. But he at least lowered his front legs back to the ground and folded his wings against his sides. Then Buckbeak pushed his head into Severus' chest, though one eye still directed on the other 2 boys. It was like if he wanted to ask Severus what he thought about them, if they could trust them. At least Severus took it like that and said, "They won't hurt me." "You do see, Draco." Severus pointed at the blonde boy. "He is my protector." Buckbeak snorted at that, causing Draco to flush. "Be nice. It's not his fault." Severus scolded and gave Buckbeak a slight slap on the beak. "He's not just my protector, but also a very dear friend. And he's also still young. To be more precise, he's still learning what it means to be a protector. Therefore, don't judge him so harshly. A protector isn't just a bodyguard. His actual task will be something else." Severus looked at Draco with a smile before he pointed with a finger at Hadrian. "This is Hadrian, my mate. I guess you know what we are, what I am. You can trust them." "Oh, and look, there's my papa." With a wide grin, Severus waved at the figure that was watching them out of the shadows of the surrounding forest. Buckbeak snapped his head up and watched the figure with a slight tremor in his muscles. Out of instinct, Buckbeak bowed to the figure, acknowledging their state as the more dangerous predator. Still nervous, Buckbeak turned his attention back to the still bowing boys. Deciding that they were safe and worthy of his trust, he bowed first to Draco and then a second time to Hadrian. Severus gave another pat before he walked over. Then he turned and said, "It has been nice to meet you, but I think it's time for us to return. Next time, maybe I can introduce you to Norbert and Aurora. They're dragons, you know. Norbert is something like my and Hadrian's adopted child." "Oh wait." Severus walked back to the hippogriff and pulled something out of his silver blue hair. "This is Dante. Please don't eat him. He's my best friend." Buckbeak examined the little bat that shared Severus' hair color and nodded as a sign that he understood and wouldn't do that. "Thanks. See you, Buckbeak. Be safe." Severus stepped back and waved at Buckbeak, who gave his own cry to saying goodbye. On their way back to castle, they met Hagrid and Alukard, who both looked relieved when they saw them. "Really, if you continue to do that, I'll lose several hundreds of years of my life. Does it matter? You're nearly immortal, right?" "That might be true, but there's still other ways to kill me. So please stop giving me heart attacks." "Come on, you don't even look worried." Hadrian scoffed in a teasing manner. "Papa was there." Severus cut in with a big smile, bouncing forth and back on his heels. "Papa?" Hagrid asked, but Alucard just waved him off. "Nothing you have to worry about, Hagrid." "Ah, if yes is so, why don't you go and check on your friend? I'll escort them back to the castle." "Okay, thank you. You're welcome. See you at lunch." Alucard and the children watched the half-giant until he was out of sight. "Now, please explain to me what exactly happened." Hagrid was half in a panic attack when he found me. "Well, on the way, Hadrian explained what happened. At the mention of the boy that pushed Severus, Alucard's expression turned dark, and he promised he'd take a closer look into the boy's background. They parted then in the Great Hall, where everyone else was already waiting and asked questions. Hadrian could just sigh. This year would definitely not be better than the last 2.